At this time, I'll call the meeting of the Marshall City Council to order with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome everyone here this evening. We do have an agenda before us. I understand there's some additions to that agenda. Glenn, you have a couple?
Yes, we have the East College Drive Sidewalk Project memorandum with the Department of Transportation is one. And then we have agreements with the Burlington Northern Railroad for permits and insurance provisions for the Main Street project.
Okay, let's add those in between agenda item number 14 and 15. So we'll call that 14E will be the East College Drive Sidewalk Project, and 14F would be the Burlington Northern Agreement. Is that acceptable to the council? Any other changes to the agenda?
Yeah, I'd like for us to have the opportunity to discuss items 6A and B simultaneously.
6A and B?
Yes.
Okay. Any other changes to the agenda? If not, we'll operate under that agenda. The first item then is to consider the approval of the minutes of the last regular council meeting that was held on March 5th, 2007, as well as the special council meeting that was held on March 12th. We do have the minutes printed of both of those meetings. Are there any corrections to note at this time?
Move to approve. Second.
Motion by Larry, seconded by Charlie. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Agenda item number 2 is the first of two public hearings that we'll have this evening. The first public hearing will be a public hearing on a resolution that would amend the proposed special assessment revisions and the special assessment policy. To conduct this public hearing, I'll call on City Administrator Mike Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. You have before you, following a recommendation from the Ways and Means Committee, is a recommendation to amend the city's special assessment policy. That recommendation is forthcoming from the city attorney, city engineer, utilities general manager, and myself, based on going through the special assessment process that we have here in the last couple of years. I think as we presented to the Ways and Means Committee, Glenn, feel free to chime in at any point as we take a look at it. We've had the opportunity to go back, that if you remember going back a number of years, and for those that weren't here, and I think I recapped at the last meeting kind of the history of where we have been in the change since Glenn came in as our City Engineer Director of Public Works, which was to develop a more formalized special assessment policy that needed to be put in place prior to the initiation of the 3 projects that we have done and completed over the last 3 years. As part of that process, City Engineer and Public Works Department also created the funding source for the stormwater surface water management utility that provided funding. But we took on the projects known as the North 6th Street, the Hill Marshall Street, and the East Area Sanitary Sewer as far as the 3 projects that we dealt with on the complete reconstruction of water, sanitary sewer, storm sewer, street, curb and gutter utilities, all of those things. We took those through the special assessment process. I'll let Glenn talk about some of the parameters of what the assessing portions were. But as we took those through the process, we had a number of appeals that were made. Ultimately, we went out and undertook appraisals, took those through a court process. District Court judge rendered an opinion. And those assessments that we initially had levied in the range on the higher end of $8,000 to $9,000 for the complete reconstruction, per the appraisal got reduced to $5,000. The district court action that came in this last year was, Glenn, I believe $4,720. Information that we've coupled as of the 1st of March, going back and undertaking the appraisal process and the litigation that we were involved with. At that point, as of the 1st of March, we had expended in excess of $92,000 on undertaking 49 appeals, which works out to on average about $2,000 per appeal. And so when you take a look at the issue that we did not have sufficient abilities to substantiate fair market value as Minnesota law requires, that was required to be reduced, and then the court action reduced that even more. So the expenditure of the appraisal and the litigation collectively, as we've looked at that between the municipal utilities, city engineer's office, and the city attorney's office, has resulted in a recommendation that we consider picking up a portion, or excuse me, all of the water main, sanitary sewer, and stormwater utilities, where previously, Glenn, the pro rata portions were approximately.
On the utilities, 75%, city 25% assessments. On the street portions, 50% city and 50% assessed.
You want to walk through any particular pages for the council's background, if you would, please?
Yes, I would. And to bring to your attention, we're handing out the new cover memo. I met with Brad Rose several times last week concerning the utilities intent on the assessment of water-related utility items. And Mr. Roos is here tonight from the utilities to discuss any of the changes that we have in front of you, as well as to answer any questions that you might have on the water-related items. But to start with, I would like to either go to page 5 of the special assessment policy. Under the special assessment uses section, in the 6th line down on that section, where it has the words water service lines in the special assessment uses, we'd like you to delete water service lines from that section. And also in, I believe it's page 20, page 22.
Glenn,
Yes.
you're talking the number, pages number 22, not 2.
That's right, it would be 2-12, page 22 of the assessment policy.
Okay. And the first one was on page,
On page 5 of the assessment policy, on the back of sheet 2-3.
okay.
All right, on page 22 or 2-12, the water main and water services portion, if you please take a look at the changes that were just handed out. And Brad, I think at this time, if you could just walk through the proposed changes. The intent, I'll give you the intent before you even start listening to that. It is intended, according to the cover memo, that there would be no special assessments for the replacement of water main, replacement of water services up to and including the curb stop, and reduced participation in special assessments for water mains and services for developer-constructed improvements. So specifically, there's a change here. Typically, the property owner currently owns the water service line from the home to the main, up to and including the main, including the corporation, the service line, the curb stop, and the line going all the way to the house to the meter. And in this proposal, after discussions with Marshall Municipal Utilities, their intent is to take ownership of those service lines up to and including the curb stop. So that's a departure from what you've done in the past. And that would start at this, whenever we adopt the policy and go from there forward. So,
Let me put a final point on that, if I may.
yes.
And really a separate thing from the special assessment
Yes.
policy. And on Wednesday evening at our utility commission meeting, it's on our agenda, and I contemplate that utility commissioners will adopt that new water service line policy. It just changes the point of demarcation between owned by the water utility and owned by the water customer. Today, that point of demarcation is at the water main. After Wednesday evening, I think it's going to be at the curb stop, which is typically just inside the property line, on the city property, just off the property line. So that change is contemplated Wednesday evening, and it really isn't germane any longer to the special assessment policy, because if the action that you're contemplating this evening is adopted, and by the way, our utility commission concurs in the action you're contemplating, there no longer will be special assessment funds used for the construction of a water main when it's a replacement water main project. And that includes the water service lines. And this language you've got in what was handed out contemplates the only time you may use a special assessment policy for a water main project is in a new development, when a subdivider negotiates per your developer's agreement with the city of Marshall, and you agree to use that tool of special assessment for the construction of a water main in a new subdivision. Now, sometimes the subdivider may not choose to use that financing tool. But in the event they want to use that financing tool, it would be a negotiation between the subdivider and typically Glenn representing your interests. And where you see up in the third line a blank before the percentage sign, that's just a placeholder, if you will, because you may want to entertain some level of security if you extend that financing tool to a new subdivision developer. You may say you want 50%, not to exceed 50% special assessment, that type of thing. So I'll offer that for an explanation for now, and I'll stand ready to answer any more questions you might have.
Okay, thank you, Brad.
Okay, and then going down to replacement projects under water main and sewer, you can see that it's a fairly simple statement now. Special assessments will not be used for water main and water service line replacement projects. Took out the entire remaining portion. That includes industrial and commercial as well, not just residential. That includes industrial and commercial. That's by request of MMU. They will handle that in their rate structure with the water users' rates. I think pretty much everything else stayed the same. The discussion that we had going through the legal process was that it's very difficult to have an increase in market value for services that you currently have and for items that you can't see. Curb appeal, those things having to do with streets, curb and gutter, sidewalks, trees and things like that are readily visible and seem to contribute more to the increase in market value. Water and sewer and other utilities, if you turn the water on and it runs, it's pretty much the same before and after. If you flush the toilet and it goes away, it's pretty much the same before and after, and didn't seem to contribute significantly to an increase in cost. Now, over the long term, when things go to pot, and there gets to be a history and a stigma on a certain area because the system doesn't work very well, it certainly may contribute to a depression or a holding down of the market value cost, but certainly nothing significant to what we need to have for the replacement projects that we have going on. So that's really the basis of these changes to the assessment policy that we would be going forward with. I think I'm going to close with that, and if you have any questions on the intent specifically, if there's some wordsmithing that we need to do, can bring that up, but that's the intent.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, Mayor, we should point out that the changes that are being recommended are in the water, sanitary sewer, and stormwater utility improvements. There was no recommended change for the streets or the sidewalks or the curb and gutter or those portions. It was only in the utilities. And as additional background, as you recall, before we went into this, and we had, this goes back 4 or 5 years through the process, we knew we were going to have to go through this complete cycle to determine what the final outcome of that process was going to be. And as we reviewed that with the committee and reviewed the costs that we've incurred in trying to comply with the statutory requirements, with the expenditure of the appraisal fees, the litigation, the legal fees in this process, and arriving at in excess or right around $2,000 per parcel, in light of the fact that we couldn't cover the original assessments anyway, it does not seem to make sense to go forward. Now, we need to make sure we point out that if we move away from this process, what that will require is those costs to be picked up under the utility rates in the water fund, the sanitary sewer fund, the stormwater surface water management utility, and yet there will be increases as we fund capital improvement costs into the future that will have to be picked up under that system. The committee is not recommending, or staff recommending at this point, that we go back and make this policy retroactive, because then you get into the situation of what year do you stop doing that and how many years do you go back. So the recommendation is to apply this policy upon the adoption and the publication of the ordinance as we move forward.
Another item I have is that we are requesting that you take action on this item tonight because subsequent projects that we have on the list tonight, specifically the Tree Streets project, the resolutions that we have in front of you are based upon the approval of this assessment policy. So if in fact it would not be approved, we would have to revise those resolutions based upon the old policy.
Okay. Mike, you have anything else? Dennis, you have any comments you want to make at this time? Open up for any comments. First off, from the Ways and Means Committee or the council.
I just got a question. I got a question. You're talking water service lines, Glenn? You're talking from the water main to the curb stop.
That's correct.
The owner's still responsible from the curb stop to the meter.
That's correct.
So that's not a part of the assessment program.
That's correct. Anything on their private property would not be included as an assessable participatory item.
Any other questions from the council? If not, as part of the public hearing, I'll open up for public comment and invite anyone that wants to speak to this issue as part of the public hearing to do so. As part of our public hearings, in order, because of the airing on public access television, I do have to ask that you come forward and speak into the microphone, and also give your name and property address at that time. Anyone wish to speak to this as part of this public hearing? Dan?
Dan Shrunk, 306 East Marshall Street. I have a question in regards to past performance on the appraisals. Why was the decision made to hire a firm that did the random appraisals on the residences when the state statute states that appraisal is done on the land only? I was chosen as a random, my property was chosen for a random appraisal. And I asked the appraiser at the time if he was aware of the state statutes. He was non-committal one way or another, and I put forth before him the state statutes, which read that in litigation for appraisals for special assessments, it pertains to only the land. And if you'll remember, I addressed you as a council in June of '05, and I brought that question before you then. I said, what is the definition of the land? I got no answer. So I think you erred in hiring a firm that did appraisals on the residences, because the residence has nothing to do with the fair market value of that property. So I think in your costs that you incurred, $90-some thousand on appraisals, I think you threw good money away after good, because the law states that it's only on the land. And also, I had a problem with the way some of the facts were reported to the media. And quoting Engineer Olson, it was stated in the paper that the law states that you must assess 20% in special assessments. I don't know if there was a mix-up in interpretation or not, but according to the law, you have to assess 20% in order to finance with GO bonds. It doesn't say you have to assess 20%. You can, on special assessments, you can go any amount. So you know, this is how the public procedure conveys its information, and I've asked before on these issues of where there's a little controversy, the way the paper reports it, that you would file a correction, because the general public just assumes that that's the way it is, and that was not the way it was.
Okay.
So, I guess, as far as trying to correct past actions with rate increases, I have a real problem with that, because it's not the public's fault that the law was not interpreted right. State statute is there to protect the ordinary citizen against overzealous city councils and city administrators and city engineers to pursue projects in excess of what the public deems necessary. And that's why they have that worded in there, that special assessments, you have to prove a fair market value increase in the same amount of the special assessment, or it's deemed too high. So I read that before you also at the public hearing in June of '05, and in there it states that any council who proceeds forward with adopting special assessments without the advice of a qualified appraiser does so at considerable risk. You chose that risk and you accepted it by making the motions to prove it, and I guess the only recourse the citizens have is by litigation. I talked to the State Attorney General office on this matter, and you know what the advice they gave me was? They said this is not an Attorney General matter, it's a state auditor's matter. I called the state auditor's office, and they told me this is not a state auditor's issue, this is an Attorney General's issue. So they waffled on it. So that doesn't leave the citizens with any other, as you experienced, with any other recourse but to take the matter into their own hands. And also, I was told, well, I asked if there's any governing body that oversees the actions of city councils when it comes to this type of a project, which was ongoing for the past 5 years on the 6th Street and the Hill Marshall projects. So you had a lot of time to do your homework. 6 years is a long time. You obviously blundered in this thing, you blew it. In the handbook for Minnesota cities and municipalities, it states the guidelines and also the state statutes, and backs it up with court cases which validified the statutes. I was told that were merely recommendations. I think you should maybe take some of those recommendations into consideration before you do some of your actions here. You would probably stay out of a little bit of the court system on this thing, if you would follow those somewhat, rather than just rubber stamp everything. I guess I saw a lot of holes in this whole thing that weren't covered from the beginning to the end. And I think to try to use a rate increase to rectify past problems which weren't addressed in front of the council is not a good way to rectify a wrong. The citizens, I asked is there any watchdog or any governing body that oversees the actions of cities, municipalities, townships, all government entities? And I was told no. They can work within their parameters any way they want. The citizens are the watchdogs. So I can see where you could come in, throw a special assessment on a 49% and wing it. There's nobody there to slap your hand to do that but the citizens. So that's why the citizens responded on the action. But I don't feel you're doing the citizens of Marshall justice by instilling a rate increase on your actions which were not correct. I don't like to be looked upon as one of a group who is responsible for raising the rates for everyone in the city, because I don't think that's the way it should be. If you would have done some appraisals before you initiated these projects, you would have stayed out of hot water on the whole thing. But you neglected to do that. So I think if the shoe fits, wear it. Thank you very much.
Dennis, a couple of things maybe that you want to respond to?
Sure. The appraisal process that the city performed was accepted and was approved through the court action. The court found that appraisal was proper.
Although the values came in less than the original assessment, we lowered our assessments to the value of the increase per the appraisal. The appraisal was done based upon an increase to the land value. It was done, was not any question by the court that it was improper in any way. It was upheld. And I don't believe that you're trying to correct past actions through this. You're trying to be forward, focusing and look to the future and trying to take care of additional projects that need to be done in the future by coming up with a funding mechanism now. There was nothing improper done about the 20% appraisal. Bond counsel indicated that if you're going to fund a portion of this through special assessments, that initial funding mechanism, you must have at least the 20%, and that was done. Now, subsequent court cases, we fell below the 20%, but there's nothing improper or illegal or inappropriate about that. It was the time to measure is at the time that the funding was approved. You're right, it was a learning process. We went through it, we learned, and that's what causes a change and a correction to the policy, and that's why it's before you. We'll fund it through rates, we'll fund part of it through rates, and we'll fund part of it through special assessments in the future.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. Other input as part of the public hearing? Questions, input from the council?
I got a question, I guess. We say we're going to fund this through increases in the funds that we have at the water or the utilities with water and sewer and whatever. Is this going to be an increase where we just increase the amount of money you're going to pay for your sewer and pay for your water? Or is this going to be an increase where you're going to do it like you do with the surface water, where we have a special line item on our utility bill that says you are paying this much for future improvement projects? How is that going to be put on the bill?
I'm going to go ahead and try to answer that, Charlie, that as you recall, when we bring forward the proposed budgets for wastewater and the surface water management utility for operating costs and capital improvements, we lay out what those 5-year capital improvements are and how we're going to pay for that as far as monies on hand or through the rates and charges that are levied in those utility funds. Brad does the same thing with his utility board. You take a look at those improvements, you have to maintain a certain cash balance and certain debt service coverage in order to issue debt. But as you go from one year to the next, we lay out what those 5-year capital improvement projects are, and that gets incorporated into the rate structure to pay for that. The dilemma and the challenge we had in the process as we've come full circle on this process is trying to determine what part of an improvement or what part of an improvement with water, the utilities, or the street should be paid for by the benefiting adjoining property owner versus that which should be picked up under the entire system. And as we've come through this process, what we're proposing as we move forward, instead of attempting to go through this process and handle special assessments, is to bring that cost into the utility funds and have it paid for as part of the utility capital improvement planning.
So you're going to do it as a portion of an increase for a sewer rate and a water rate?
Well, your water rates, your sanitary sewer rates, or your surface water management utility rates are based on what your annual operating costs are to manage those utilities and to pay for the capital improvements necessary to replace infrastructure or buildings or equipment in the field or in that system.
Okay, but could it now also be paid for on a line item basis as a capital improvement thing, as like the surface water's done?
We lay out those
where you have it into a special fund where when I paid into that fund, I know exactly how much I'm paying for that improvement, rather than, I don't know how much I'm paying for improvements in general, rather than just, I don't know. I don't know how much of that is sewer and how much of that is improvement in my sewer rate.
Yeah, you're able to take a look at that when you look at the annual budget that gets put together and brought before you every year. How much of your rate structure is going to pay operating costs versus how much is going to pay for debt service costs and or capital improvement replacements. That's a part of that rate structure that you look at every year.
That's part of what I get to see in the council,
That's correct.
but it's not something that I get to see monthly on my bill.
No, that we don't have the abilities and the luxury on that little postcard or the little billing page that goes out through the utilities to do any more than to have a rate per...
When I hear you asking, Charlie, is a rate design question. Now, I don't know about the stormwater and the sanitary sewer utility, but for the water utility, we had planned a water rate study for later this year. So we'll be having that conversation with the Utility Commission about rate design later this year.
Okay. No, I'm not, that's not my question. I guess my question is why does it have to be lumped into an increase in the sewer rate or a water rate? Why can't it stand on its own on the bill by itself like the surface water does?
Because then my bill would be about 4 pages long. We have capital components.
It's one more line.
Well, no, but what you're asking is a rate design question, and having worked with rate design for 30 years for utilities, you can keep breaking out things, line item, line item, line item, and it just becomes unreadable. This is one line item, because we're talking about one thing right now, but we could be talking about 20 more things that affect only the water utilities that are potential line item things, state mandated things as an example, or water testing fees as an example. Or you can put that in your budgeting process and do it really thoroughly during the budgeting process with the policymakers, and then put it into a rate that works. So that's what we intend to do with the water rate component of this action. And I kind of heard Mike say that that's what he's contemplating doing with the stormwater and wastewater as well.
Other input from the council? Questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Charlie, seconded by Mike to close the public hearing. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Now consider the resolution as it was recommended. Questions about the resolution?
I would move the resolution amending the proposed special assessment policy.
Second.
Motion by Mike, seconded by Larry. Discussion?
One item.
Yes.
On the page 22, under water main and water services, where we left the blank percent, this is just a policy that gets interpreted and put into the development contract, which each of you would see in a future use. I would like to see that changed to maybe used to fund a portion of the costs. That portion then would come forward to you in the development contract, so as not to leave that as a blank percentage in the policy. That's all right with everyone.
Is that acceptable to the maker of the motion?
Yes.
And the second?
A portion.
On the one that they handed out.
Other discussion on the motion?
I got two items I guess I'd like to say. First of all, I do believe that we should put this on a bill as a separate item so people know exactly what they're paying for those improvements rather than saying, well, somebody knows. I don't think that's the right action. And the second thing, I don't believe it's totally the right action, just what Hill Street and 6th Street went through, and for them to be on the bill, I think there'd be ways that we could fairly operate to consider them paying twice for their improvements. These guys paid these assessments for 4720. Now they get to pay assessments through their water bill and their sewer bill for the next 40 years that they're not going to get any improvements in their streets. And I guess I don't see that that's a very fair thing. I don't think it's a very, and I know you got to draw a line somewhere. You can't go back 20 years, whatever, but I do have an issue with that. And if it's not on the water bill separate, I guess I couldn't say that I would ever support this item here, this whole special assessment policy unless we can assess it so people can see it exactly what they're paying.
Other discussion on the motion, Glenn?
One comment to that, Charlie, might be that the special assessment policy itself may be agreeable to you, but the interpretation or how it gets put on the bill or something like that could certainly be discussed at a later time. When we go through that budget process, you'll probably see how that percentage is broken out, but the billing itself, the changing of the billing, could be a whole separate discussion than the policy itself.
Well, looking at past history, I don't think it's going to change after we vote on it tonight.
Other discussion on the motion? If not, I'll call for a vote on the motion. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes. Jane, you have the vote? Okay. Agenda item number 3 is also a public hearing. This will be a public hearing concerning the adoption of the ordinance amending the city code pertaining to the private use of public streets and parking lots. I'll call Glenn Olson, Director of Public Works, City Engineer, for this public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is something that we've struggled with over the last few years as far as how to take care of permits for this private use of public streets. And a lot of times we have a maintenance project, somebody comes in, wants to take up parking areas or a spot for a dumpster or some fairly simple request. And so we've put that in front of you that our office would be responsible for taking those permits, approving those permits on a basis by which we believe that you would approve them. And then anytime, for instance, I would deny a permit, they would have the right to come to council for discussion, or also if it's a fairly significant one, like closing the streets for the parades, or closing a section of street that may be busy and controversial. And then we would put those permits and approvals in a report similar to what we would do the building permits, so that you're aware of them. These are the ones that we've handed out over the last 2 weeks, things like that. So it's, there again, a change to the policy that we can streamline the process a little bit.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. Any input from the council as part of this public hearing? From the audience? Al?
Al Reagan Gregerson. As I looked over this ordinance, it applies to streets and public parking lots. And this ordinance permits the leasing of parking stalls on your public parking lots. Is that correct?
That's the intent of it, that's correct.
If you have a lease, when you lease a stall on a parking lot, that's for, you get to determine who gets to use it. If I were to go to the city council and say, I like 2 stalls behind Sam's, as I'm getting older, you notice this gray hair coming in and no hair at all, perhaps, you'll find that I might be able to negotiate a lease for 2 stalls behind Sam's, and I wouldn't have to walk as far. Well, the question is, if you have if I were to put in a restaurant down here, would you be able then to lease from the city 15 to 20 stalls out of your city parking lot? I'm not sure that that's the right way to go, to lease out stalls on public parking. The commercial area needs a lot of turnover. That rather than have an office worker be able to afford 1 stall for themselves, it's really needed to have turnovers. In the noon lunch at the Hunan Lion needs a whole bunch of parking. And then later on in the afternoon, they don't perhaps need any parking. And so that turnover is really critical to having specific areas designated for only 1 person. If an apartment person wanted 1 because they don't want to walk, would you lease 1 stall to that person, and the rest of the time when they're at work all day would be left empty? We really need that for the whole thing. So I'm not sure we want to, as a community, get into the business of leasing stalls. Thank you.
Thanks, Al. Comment? Glenn?
Yeah, comment on that is it requires the council to take the action, knowing what all the information is concerning that request. And as an example, if there were 15 spaces in Block 11 next to that east building of the parking lot, would that be appropriate parking for an apartment building that would be 2 to 3 blocks away? It may be in your consideration. It may not be. If they want one right behind Sam's place, or that might not be an appropriate location for a rented spot. So it is a political decision and a direction that council would have to take on that. But I do believe it's an item that the council may want to have in their arsenal of permits and things like that to allow that to happen. We're having a transition with more and more residential uses downtown. The committees have gone through several variance items on parking, residential parking. So that's why it's in there. I think, like Al said, everyone would be an individual request, but I think it should be in there to allow you to do it if it's necessary.
Mike, you had a comment?
Yes, I think, part of the reason for this coming up is after the parking lot, the P-lot, the infamous P-lot back there, dumpsters and so forth had to be on private property. There are several, I can't tell you a number, where there is not physical room for the dumpster needed for the type of business. And you suggested at that point that we needed to have some way that they could rent a spot in a public parking lot to put those dumpsters. Is that was part of the reasoning for this?
That is correct. Not only for parking, but the ability to lease space within that parking lot for private use.
But certainly, and again, we're in a transition period, but there are businesses located there and over here that the type of use requires a fair amount of dumpster. And if the building is built right to the property line and there is no place to put it, the concern was you didn't want them sitting on the sidewalk, which, again, there was a reason there's a sidewalk behind that, so pedestrians can walk. So I think we have no choice but to have some way for someone to come up and show hardship that they need to rent. We shouldn't just let them park it there in the public space without some sort of a permitting policy.
And that's what this action would.
Yes.
Right. The other example, and that's a good example, the other example that we've had in recent years is when we did act on the conditional use permit for the Marshall Hotel next door to City Hall. Certainly there was a parking requirement there that was no parking availability on that property. So one of the options would have been, if that owner, that was actually offered up to that owner, is if there would be parking that they could lease within a certain perimeter of that area. That would include perhaps some city-owned property, and you mentioned the property on the 100 block. Might have been a possibility there, too. Okay, Roger.
Roger Bell, I own property right down over here on 4th Street. Let's get to the bare fact. Why is this lease deal in here? The reason is because the city has leased out parking spots. We lost 8 parking spots over in the small lot. 5 of them when you went in there, and it took the curb out. Now, Midwest is parking 3 more in there. These lots were paid for by parking meter money and by us people being assessed for it when we took the parking meters out. And this is wrong. This is public parking. And for you people to sit here, and then all of a sudden I come there, and I got 3 more parking spots going. What's your reason? I can't, This is wrong. This is public parking. What's going to happen when you start over here? Now, there's going to be a building going up. There's going to be people that are going to be working there. Are they going to lease the parking lot? You started out here, when you built this here, you got the city hall here because of the fire department. You started out with 10 people at the most. You are now what, 30 people full-time? 7 part-time? You know where they park? Right over here. From the alley to Lion Street, you cannot find a parking spot during the day. You took them 3 away. I've got one person that walks up here in City Hall, that gets in, and I got another person that walks over to the library. You've taken parking spots from us, public people, this is wrong.
Mike or Glenn, any?
Sure,
response on that?
I can comment on the spots. I don't know if they're, what the history is of the parking spots. I understand that there was a 5-year assessment for maintenance that was taken up after the parking meters went away. I don't believe that that assessment has been made since that time. And is Tom here tonight?
No, that assessment was for what was left owed on the money of the parking lot, or money that was left owed.
Okay. And the most recent movement has been, as council is aware, and maybe Roger is too, that the report that we had on the garage required us, or suggested strongly, that we relocate the vehicles from the garage downstairs. One weekend when we had the significant snowfall, we moved them inside, and we had significant leaking down into the basement again. As you're aware also, we have additional employees, like Roger had mentioned, that now we have offices in the basement. We don't believe that we should be putting them under the leaking of the surface up above, as well as we continue to have delamination of the steel in the floor and material coming off the ceiling downstairs. So the intent was to move them out of there for now. We have some opportunities to move the vehicles elsewhere if we need to. And also, we're working with the owners of the middle school property to construct another approximately 100 spaces for this spring in that location as well. Once that is constructed, and we haven't been discussing this more than just inside of our own office, but it's our intent to direct city office employees to park further away from the downtown, just like we expect the businesses to direct their employees to park further away from downtown as well. So that's our intent. My understanding is they're city-owned lots. We do have 5 spaces leased to, or included in the lease of Midwest. So that's something that we must provide over there. And the change to the parking is directly related to the inability to use our garage appropriately. We will be initiating a study that was included in the budget for 2007 for the more detailed analysis of the floor. In the first report, it was said that we could either construct a new floor over the top of what's existing, or what are the other alternatives? Abandoning it, putting it into some other use. It didn't take 10,000-pound vehicles, 10 of them to put in there, quite a weight in there. So that's, we certainly aren't leaving that thing without having some discussion. That's the reasons for that use. Like Roger said, it is plumb full. You have to drive around the block a couple of times to find a spot if you want to park in that lot. And I think that is a coming thing. I think we're going to have more use downtown. And with the 100-plus parking spots that we have in Block 11, with the 100-plus parking spots that we're probably going to be constructing in the middle school parking lot, hopefully the city and the businesses take advantage of those spots and make that direction to relocate that employee parking. But until that time, and you've heard now what all of the things that we have kind of going on right now with that parking, it's going to be difficult for 2-3 weeks. We wouldn't intend to start utilizing the middle school parking until middle of April, let's say, because we have to do some improvements to it. We have to blade it and haul gravel up there tear down the backstops, and, you know, there is some work to do for our street department there. But, yes, there is a parking dilemma.
Thank you. Mike, then Dan.
Glenn, I believe, didn't the city rent some of the parking spots from Q West back here? And those are the ones that are primarily being used for Minnesota. In essence,
And the city.
we lease them and subleasing them.
Mike, maybe you know the agreement to that. If you remember, there used to be a long barrier between Quest's parking lot and the city's. And there was parallel parking on one side of that long barrier. That long barrier was taken out, and then part of that space is on Quest property that the city uses for all their parking, and that what we had in our lease. We just have to provide 5 spaces for them as long as they're there. And that, Mike, do you want to comment on that?
Councilmember Bonenheimer, you're correct that the southerly half towards the Quest building is leased by the city. At least the northern half of that is leased from Quest. What is referenced in the discussion tonight is Glenn dealt with the flooring issue in the building. Is that by moving those vehicles out of there, he relocated 3 spots around the other side, which is what Roger is referring to. But yes, that one half is leased from Quest by the city.
Dan?
Glenn, it talks about compensation for a permit. What are you thinking on?
We're thinking about the compensation, for instance, in the leased area would be the compensation established by the council. And generally, that would be by location. It might be more valuable in the P lot than it would be in Block 11. So compensation there would probably be established by at least an analysis of Cal's office, is what the value of the spots would be, and then we would recommend to you a lease amount for those spaces. So I wouldn't give you an amount today, but that would be the basis. The permit fee, you know, if there was a permit fee, it would be similar to something that, you know, some small amount for, I don't know what we have for a parade fee or something, you know. It would be something that generally, if you wanted to put a dumpster for your business that was remodeling or something like that, it'll come back to you in your annual resolution of fees and rates. Whether that's $10 or $50 or nothing. I haven't even discussed that.
I guess where I'm going with this is, first of all, the permit request for parking comes to you. And then there's that process.
Yeah.
And then that right of
It'll go to
appeal
council.
And it'll come under your recommendation.
Recommendation.
I don't mean to put you on the spot. Let's just put a scenario out there. Let's say that someone wanted to develop the top of their store, and they wanted to put in 6 apartments. And they came to the city and they wanted to rent or lease some space in Block 11 to accommodate that. Based on what I just said, and I know that's kind of an unknown to you too, some of the specifics, what would your recommendation be?
I would probably recommend that it be approved in Block 11. I probably would not recommend that it be approved in any other city-owned lot at this time. However, if it was a dumpster
No, I'm not talking dumpster,
request
I'm talking
in
apartment.
P lot, that I wouldn't require that one to be leased in Block 11 because they wouldn't take their guard.
Yeah,
But-
I understand.
But what we've discussed in planning is residential parking spots should be located within 3 blocks of the apartment.
2 to 3, I've seen.
You know, okay, up to 3 blocks,
Yeah.
within 3 blocks. And that would generally be our direction as well. Yeah. First of all, we want them to find one first.
Sure.
As an alternative, we may say we have 15 spots available along the, I call it the eastern or southeastern edge of that lot that would be available. Now, we certainly wouldn't want to go into a long-term agreement that might be available with 30 days' notice if we have something to do with that lot. If we had a developer come in and he wanted to use that, we may give him 30 days' notice on that spot.
Okay.
Okay, and then he'd have to find a different spot for them.
Yeah, but let's say that that a property owner developed 5 apartments.
Yep.
And he got the parking like we're talking about.
Yep.
And a year or two down the road, something happens with Block 11, and we pull that parking permit.
That owner of
Is there
those
recourse to the
apartments
city?
would have to know that up front, and that it's still their responsibility to provide those off-street parking spaces.
Okay.
This is just one alternative to that. We would certainly suggest that he find every other spot to do it, and maybe when he's leasing those, he's looking for other spots.
I brought that up because I could
Yep.
possibly see something like that.
Sure.
Charlie?
Thank you.
Glenn, during the meeting we had in Illinois about this issue, we weren't looking at, in the short term right now, just randomly going out renting parking spaces
No.
for tenant parking. The basic thing of this was to move this in a way where when things come up where someone needed a dumpster Thursday because they're gonna start demolition, and you say, well, I'll tell you what, the council meeting's in a week and a half, you can wait a week and a half and we'll let you have it.
That's the way the current ordinance is.
Yeah, and so that's what we were trying to correct at the time. It wasn't as much as to say, well, we're gonna start renting, and I don't think the council here, or, the administration, or the city staff wants to start renting parking places, knowing the parking crunch we got right now, unless we had parking in a place where we could afford to let it go. And so, the concern about whether we're gonna start just renting parking spaces at random at anybody in Sam's Place, or down over in this lot over here, or P-Lot, that's not what we're talking about.
Right.
We're just talking about if there was a dumpster needed, or something like that, they could get it done before waiting a week and a half, 2 weeks, till it can get on the agenda for a city council meeting. And then, I'd like to have that provision in there for parking, because I think it's something that we can examine further on down the road, where we may develop some more parking places within 3 blocks of Main Street, where we can have something available. But we're not talking about the immediate parking lot we have right now is doing those. That was my understanding.
Any other input from the council as part of the public hearing? Or any other input from the audience as part of the public hearing? If not, is there a motion to close this public hearing?
So moved.
Motion by Charlie,
Second.
seconded by Larry. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion
Abstain.
Motion passes to close the public hearing. Jane, you have the abstention. We'll now consider the resolution on the private use of public streets and parking lots. Any questions about the resolution? If not, is there a motion?
I move the adoption of the ordinance.
Second.
Motion by Mike, seconded by Charlie. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed,
Abstain.
motion passes. Jane, you have the abstention. Agenda item number 4, it's pertaining to award of bids. This is for, the first award of bids would be for the Tree Street Area Improvement Project. We'll have the resolution declaring the cost to be assessed and ordering the preparation of the proposed assessment, as well as the resolution declaring the official intent regarding the reimbursement of the expenditures with the proceeds of tax-exempt bonds. And then finally, we'll act on the resolution accepting the bid or awarding the contract. Glenn?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The resolution does reference the special assessment policy that you just approved. I will say that there is a significant difference in the bid amounts for the services to the individual property owners. Significant difference from the bids to the engineer's estimate. And because of that fact, we have the amount shown here that comes directly from the bids, plus the contingencies and engineering of $506,000. You can see that's about 25% of the job. And that wouldn't be something that you would expect under the new policy. But because of the bid prices that they put on the service lines, we are going to be recommending to the property owners that they look elsewhere for their improvements to their service lines. Okay? They put a considerable amount of money on the service lines. They don't want to do them. And so we will still make that available to the property owners at the cost that's shown in the contract. And we will be contacting each property owner concerning that item. But when it comes back to you, there will probably be less being assessed than this amount shown on the sheet. I just want to bring that to your attention in the resolution declaring the cost assessed.
Any questions about that resolution on the cost to be assessed? Mike?
Yes, because it does have the dollar amounts which tie back to the bid. I guess looking at it, I recognize the name of the one contractor, and they have done work for the city of Marshall before, is that not correct?
The low contractor has not.
That's,
And I was going to bring that up under the recommendation for award. I'm sorry, I didn't have the time today to check with the city engineer there. I will. And if we want to make a contingent recommendation on one of the future items for award, I just didn't get the time to do that today.
well, I guess that was my question. This resolution is the cost to be assessed until we award the bid or find out the information. Until we know that number, it seems silly to adopt the resolution.
The total amount is shown there correctly, and the amount to be assessed is shown as approximately based upon the bids. So,
Based upon the bid, but the
Based
bid
upon-
may or may not be accepted until later on.
yes,
see.
maybe a comment there, Mike? I don't see an issue with the resolution itself being approved, no matter, unless you're not going to award the bids. Then you'd have to go, it might be higher than that, because the next one is $200,000 more.
Right, I think that's your question, Councilmember Bodenheimer, is you may not want to award the bid, you may want to hold that item open, which would then increase the assessment amount if you did not award the low bid. That's where you're going with that, isn't it?
So is the question here, is the bidder responsible? Is that the question?
The contractor is fully bonded for the project. We don't know of any problems with the contractor. I wanted to touch base today. Did not get the time to do that. I think between the administrator and the attorney, if they want to have any comments concerning it, I would appreciate that.
I'll tell you, I know the contractor, and he does bid against Dunnix in a lot of jobs, and Dunnix don't like him. That's all I know.
Based on the bidding procedure and the fact that the bid security was there and that it is a responsible bid, certainly in the, between the time of the action of the city council in awarding and the time that the contract is solidified with the successful bidder, certainly there's insurance and everything like, and bonding requirements that all have to be solidified by that time. There's always a chance that in between the time, after the time that the city awards the bid, that contract is not solidified. Then it would then come back. And that could happen with any of our projects.
Correct. I'm assuming, as you indicated, all of the specifications for the bid package were met, and you have no reason to believe it's not the responsible bidder.
That's correct.
At this point.
Now, if, for the council's, the council could take these items in different order, correct, Glenn?
Yes, you should take them in order.
In the
Yeah.
order that you have listed here?
Yes.
Okay. So the first resolution then is, declaring the cost to be assessed, ordering the preparation of that assessment roll. Any further question about that resolution?
And I have one more comment on that. I think when we get down to awarding it and these other ones, to make a person feel better about, subject to some sort of verification of the contractor's responsibility level. I don't know how to word that properly, but everything is there according to the contract for him to do it. I will make a phone call tomorrow concerning that comfort level, but you don't bid a $2 million project and you bid one the next day in another community without some sort of backing and availability. Yeah, you may have, one community may have more difficulties working with one contractor than another on a specific project. That doesn't mean you can't do the job.
The law requires us to award this to the lowest responsible bidder, and unless we have some proof of their inabilities or incapabilities of performing the work, then and only then could we recommend you to go to the second low bidder.
I did also check with the state, and they have a list of debarred contractors, and he wasn't on that list. So that's another, we use that for subcontractors as well, to make sure that we're not getting into someone that's already got a problem, even if they're a subcontractor.
Mike, I understand what you're saying, but because having been on the council and seeing these names and knowing that we've worked with them, I think it would not hurt to do some background, whatever we want to call it, background check or whatever, to find out. 'Cause this is a complete unknown.
Then you should either table that action or award it contingent upon that proving out in the either or scenario.
And I would certainly like to see it contingent upon, because this is a project that needs to start early, and there's a definite timeline between 3 separate prime contractors.
I would move the resolution declaring the cost and ordering preparation of assessments subject to or contingent upon Glenn being satisfied as to inquiries concerning the bid.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Motion by Mike, seconded by Dan. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion passes. The second item then would be the resolution declaring the official intent regarding the reimbursement of the expenditures with the proceeds of tax-exempt bonds. Questions about this resolution?
That's an administrative requirement that financial advisor and bond counsel indicate that if it's our intent to reimburse with any part of that through the bonds, is that we adopt a number on the upper end of the project to ensure that we've got the abilities to reimburse.
Is there a motion?
Move the resolution.
Second.
Motion by Mike, seconded by Larry. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. And then agenda item C is the resolution accepting the bid and awarding the contract. The low responsible bidder is Chad Munson Excavating LLC. Bid amount $1,985,666.44. I'd entertain a motion for that resolution contingent upon the city engineers doing the additional background checking on the qualifications of the successful bidder.
So,
Motion by Charlie, seconded by Larry. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Agenda item number 5 is the East College Drive Tree Street Water Main Replacement Project. The action here would be the resolution of accepting the bid and awarding the contract. And Glenn, comments about the bid process?
No, we had real good bids. You can see the low 2 bidders were within about $40,000 of each other. We have worked with GM Contracting before, most notably at the water and sewer at the airport. We would recommend approval.
Question for Glenn? If not, is there a motion?
Move to approve the resolution accepting the bid.
Second.
Motion by Larry, seconded by Charlie. Discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Agenda item number 6, consider the award of bids for vehicles and equipment for the Public Works and the Parks Department. We have to consider the bid for a wastewater skid loader, also a skid loader for the street department, and we'll discuss those together. Also, we have the vehicles for the Public Works and the Parks Department, as well as the authorization to purchase a used semi-tractor for the wastewater treatment facility. Glenn?
I think you can take a look at both of the recommendations for the skid steer if you want to handle those together. We did have some difficulty with one of the skid steers bid, and so we went on to the second bid. It seemed to be, at least in the wastewater department, it was the same bidder, just a different piece of equipment. So if you have any questions, I have staff here too to answer any questions that you might have.
Yeah, I've got a question. When you take a look at the combination bid of skid loader 1 and 2 with the attachments for the trade-in, the city would save, if they went with that, excuse me, that bid, the city would save $1,670 instead of taking it like the recommendation is. Also,
Explain which one, Dan, I'm sorry.
we took combination bid, skid loader 1 with attachments, and number 2 with attachments, with the trade-in. The total amount is $72,072.43, which is $1,670.30 less than the recommendation coming on buying one from one bidder and one from the other. And also, beyond the dollar amount, I guess I'm looking at, these machines are 9 to 10 years, is how long the city keeps them, right?
At least.
Yeah. So if we're gonna, say you run out of town to one bidder 2 times a year, or you've got to take a piece of equipment over there because it costs a lot of money to have them come and fix it. You're going 13 miles one way versus just on the other side of town. I guess the time spent and that type of expense would add up quite a bit.
I'm trying to add up the numbers here, make sure. I have the recommended with trade-in of 18,813.23 plus the 2959.25 for the upgraded snow blower with D&M, 21,772.48.
Yes.
Okay. And the one for the street department was 50,095.47, period. And then if you go down to the combination bids, you'd go with the trade-in. Okay? Right, that would be the 69, 113.18 plus 29, 59.25.
Right.
Do you have a number there?
72,072.43.
72.
07243, I believe.
And if you add the other two together, help me out again. 50, 195, 47,
21,77248.
71, what?
71,87695.
And that's specifically where the recommendation comes from. And anything other than the low bid needs to be a discussion with council?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, good. I
So now-
thought that we made a mistake on the low, I'm sorry.
I guess I put it out a little bit wrong.
All right,
So the bottom line is, if we took the combination bid from, on the John Deere versus doing the recommendation is $204 more,
that's correct.
48 cents.
That's correct.
So what I'm getting at is you take that over 10 years, 5 years, whatever, and the mileage and the time.
Glenn, would you clarify why you made the recommendation that you and the staff did on this?
Clarification, no, I'm going to just compare it against what we just discussed, rather than the one that we didn't feel met minimum specifications.
Yeah.
The reason we made the recommendation that we did was, we believed that they all met minimum specifications minus some minor items that we could live with. The first one didn't. And the other reason is they are all compatible, and we were recommending low responsible bidder. Period.
And
Period.
you
Just
did-
that straight.
And you did it right.
Okay.
But now I'm
Yeah.
coming back to the council
right.
and saying, hey,
Yeah.
for $204 more, how do we want to spend our money? On the road?
Well, I think,
Driving back and forth.
the thing you have to assume is that you're gonna be going after parts, you're gonna have to be going there for repairs, so not only if you're looking at 48 cents a mile times 26 miles every time you take a trip over there, you also got a person that's gonna be tied up to take that over there, they don't, come and get it for you, you have to take it to them. So now you got some more expense going back and forth to Minneota and back, if it's gonna tie up an hour at a time or whatever. I guess my feeling when I looked at it is for that $204, that's, I would rather go with the two identical machines and use the two identical machines rather than split off into two different machines. And that way, if there ever came a time or a purpose that we needed to borrow one and use for different purposes, we could.
I'd like to make a note. Glenn, I apologize if I came at you where you guys weren't doing it. You guys were doing your job. Now it comes back to us too.
Yep,
so
that's right.
I apologize.
Our requirements under the law, and I'll let Dennis allude to that, but our responsibility under the law is to award the lowest responsible bidder that meets the specifications. We don't have the luxury of picking and choosing who you award it to, and I think Dennis is going to talk about is there are potential repercussions if you choose not to award it to the lowest responsible bidder.
Well, and you can choose to do that, but you better be very specific on your reasons for not awarding that. Now, as you indicated, the compatibility of the machines, the equipment, the attachments, that may do it for a $200 difference, but
Well, how about the cost of servicing and taking care of that thing over a period of 10 years?
Statute doesn't provide
no,
for that.
yeah. Again, that may be a justification in your own mind, but
To me, it's justification on paper, the expense that would be incurred over the lifetime of two machines. We're talking $100 a machine over 10 years, that's $10 a year. And if you take 13 miles times the IRS numbers at 48 cents, it's all ate up. That's not any time spent. So I would make a motion, we accept the combination bid on skid loader number 1 with attachments, number 2 with attachments, with the trade, from D&M Implement for $72,072.43.
Second.
Motion by Dan,
I just stated my reason.
as part of the motion, though, you should.
Something.
Okay, motion by Dan, seconded by Charlie. Discussion on the motion.
On his reason, you're also adding the fact that it's two completely compatible machines.
They're both compatible for the attachments. Yeah.
But really,
We're not,
we need to restate those reasons, so we get them
Restate
recorded
the
in the...
motion.
okay. I'll make a motion, we go with number 1 with attachments, number 2 with attachments, with the trade, with D&M for $72,072.43, which will cost us $204.48 more for 2 machines. My justification is the 10-year, that we keep those 2 machines, that we will save more money than that traveling back and forth for repairs and warranty work.
The compatibility of the attachments.
They are compatible.
They are,
But
Oh, yeah.
that's part of your motion.
Yeah, all the machines are compatible.
that's correct.
And
Is that
I'm
acceptable?
not trying to take anything away from either dealer either.
Is that acceptable
It's
to the second?
acceptable to me.
Okay, discussion on that motion.
Just any discussion, Bob, that you're aware of? I think yours was the one that was recommending that one anyway.
Yeah, I guess the only the difference would be is we're trading in a vehicle on this, so that by trading that vehicle in, it actually makes the combination bid look better for the 2 machines, but when you break them out individually as 2 separate machines, the Bobcat for the street department does come in roughly $1,200 cheaper.
But we're talking a trade.
Yeah, and I guess the trade value should be allotted for the wastewater utility fund, that's where it was funded from originally.
I know where you're going.
Other discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote on the motion. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, aye. 1 abstention. Jane, you have the vote. I voted no. And Larry abstained. Okay. Agenda item number 7. It's the consent agenda, or excuse me, we'll go on C and D, the award of bids for the vehicles for Public Works and Parks Department.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. You can see that we tried to bid this every possible way with all kinds of combination bids, and the recommendation is, after the review of all the bids, you can see the asterisks were the items that were a little bit different than our bid procedure. For instance, on the Parks vehicle, they didn't have green, dark blue is acceptable. The battery size, we checked on, that was bid, didn't meet minimums. We spoke to the dealership on that they would install a larger one at no additional cost. We have the asterisk for the public ways maintenance vehicle, that the dealership indicated that they know that the city would not be happy with the 4.6 liter V8, which was a surprise because it took them out of contention then for the bid. So after the review, we do recommend the award to Anton Chevrolet and Lockwood Motors as shown in the recommendation.
Questions?
I would move the purchase of vehicles as recommended
Second.
by Glenn.
Motion by Mike, seconded by Dan. Discussion? Not all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. And 6D is the consideration of the purchase of a used semi-tractor for the wastewater department. Glenn?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This one, is one of those difficult ones where when you're buying used vehicles, you just have to see what's available and wait until you find one that looks like it'll serve our purpose. Bob Van Moore is here from the wastewater facility. I think Bob even had it hooked up to our trailers to make sure it was compatible with them. We would recommend purchase of 2002 semi from Olson & Johnson for $33,015, including tax and trade-in.
Questions? If not, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion, we approve it.
Second.
Motion by Dan, seconded by Charlie. Discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Agenda item number 7 is the consent agenda. Number of items on the consent agenda, first being the annual renewal of the consumption and display licenses for April 1, 2007 through March 31st of 2008. Second would be the annual renewal of the refuse hauler's license from April 1st, 2007 to March 31st, 2008. Third is the annual renewal of the plumber's licenses, again from April until next March. Fourth would be a new plumber's license for Edward Tuft, doing business as ET Heating and Cooling. And then finally are the bills and the project payments, and then for information purposes are the building permits that have been previously approved by city staff. Is there any item on the consent agenda that any member of the council wants removed for purposes of separate discussion?
Item B?
6B, any other item? If not, we'll consider the consent agenda items A, C, D, and E. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Charlie, seconded by Mike. Discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. 7B is the annual renewal of the refuse hauler's license.
Must abstain.
I'll abstain.
Is there a motion?
I make a motion to approve that.
Second.
Motion by Charlie, seconded by Larry. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and
Abstain.
one abstention. This time, before we move further with the meeting, I'm going to call for a 5-minute recess. We'll reconvene the meeting. We're on agenda item number 7, or excuse me, agenda item number 8. This is considered a request from Menard Incorporated, the variance adjustment permit for the sign. This is, recommendation here is to remove this item from the table and then retable it until April 2nd, based on the inability of the applicant to provide the information for this meeting, correct?
That's correct.
So a motion to remove this item from the table and again table this until the April 2nd meeting.
So moved.
Okay, who was down here? Mike, motion by Mike, seconded by Charlie. Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Agenda item number 9, consider the adoption of the amended ordinance for the sale of city-owned real property to the Schwantz Development Corporation as required by Marshall City Charter, Section 12.05. Dennis.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. You have the amended ordinance in front of you, as was previously explained. The prior ordinance as passed referenced a property exchange agreement. There is no property exchange agreement, so it should properly represent a purchase agreement. So a very minor technical change, but that needs to be done, and then we would propose to close on the property the last week of this month on March 28th.
Any questions for Dennis on this?
Move that change.
Motion by Charlie, is there a second? Second. Seconded by Larry. Discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Agenda item number 10, consider the approval of the information technology upgrade for Vera Marshall Regional Medical Center, and there we are. Sharon Williams, representing the hospital, is here with the recommendation. Sharon?
Thank you. This is an item that earlier this evening our hospital board recommended to the city council. We've been working on looking at upgrading our information technology system for the past 4 to 5 years, or we started 4 to 5 years ago. We started the process, and then it became apparent to us that we might affiliate with a larger system, which you all know that we ended up doing about 3 years ago. So we had put our upgrade on hold. So once the affiliation went through about 3 years ago, we started to look at once again updating the information technology system. We've been working on this project since. However, once we started working with Avera, they started looking at whether the system they were using was the proper system to meet their goals for the future. In the industry that we're in, we're looking at needing to achieve the electronic medical record. And so Avera went through a process of validating the Meditech system, which is the system we're proposing tonight. They came back approximately 6 months to a year ago and said that is the system that they will be using in the future. We have since worked with them to put together a project which we're proposing in front of you today. It's a project that would be a total of $1.5 million or thereabouts, just a little bit less. It's a combination of Meditech software and also a hardware combination. We would be looking at attaching to the Avera System Health Network. In total, like I said, the project is $1.5 million. Avera Health would actually sign a contract with Meditech for the software for Avera Marshall, and the reason for doing this would be to achieve better savings in the cost of the product. In total, about $1 million would be a contract signed by Avera Health for the software and the hardware. We would look at signing a contract with Avera Health and paying back that $1 million over the course of a 5-year period of time. That would be paid back at an interest-free rate. The other part of the project would be upgrading our network, which is $380,000, and then also implementation of the actual upgrade of the software. That's another $100,000. That's how we get to the total of $1.5 million. We have had this in the capital budget. It's in the capital budgets for 2007 through 2009. We had a total of $1.8 million in those 3 years, so we had enough in our capital budgets to match the amount that we're asking for. We have, in our discussions with Avera Health, talked about what happens if we sever our relationship with Avera. In the agreement that we have proposed, we would have buyout capabilities of the software, which I have mentioned in the document. I also want to state that as a comparison for pricing, we went out to our current vendor, looked at a hospital information system which was comparable. We're talking about software that would cover from admitting through clinicals, through nursing, the physicians, and even the long-term care. The comparable price from our current vendor was $2.1 million. We also went to Meditech ourselves and received pricing if we were to do this alone without the help of Avera Health. The price there was $2.2 million. So the savings that we're looking at is somewhere between $600,000 and $700,000 by doing this in conjunction with Avera Health. In addition, we would be looking at about a $77,000 a year savings in support fees because we would be receiving our support through Avera McKinnon versus going actually to the Meditech company themselves. I would open it up for questions at this point in time.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. Questions? Question I would have, is this also compatible with the medical software, hardware and software that the physicians are using, even if they're not affiliated with
We would allow them to have access to it, but it is not the same system.
Okay.
You know, they have their own network. No matter what system we look at purchasing, we're not going to have the same exact system as they do.
Okay. Other questions? If not, you have the recommendation. I would entertain a motion.
Move the approval of the upgrade based on the recommendation of our hospital board.
Second.
Motion by Mike, seconded by Charlie. Discussion? The one piece of discussion I would add is you did a very thorough presentation. However, I'd also add that also represents a lot of work that's gone on for a long, long time in coming to this recommendation. So even though your presentation was brief and to the point, that shouldn't be misconstrued as we are making a large investment, and there's certainly been a lot of investigation, a lot of due diligence that brought you to this recommendation. So, other discussion on the motion? If not, I'd call for a vote on the motion. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Sharon. Agenda item number 11, consider the resolution approving the issuance of the public utility revenue bonds, the public refunding bonds and authorization of certain actions be taken by Marshall Municipal Utilities Commission with respect to the issuance of the Series 2007A bonds and the 2007B bonds. With us tonight is Brad Rose, representing the utilities, along with Financial Counsel Terry Heaton.
Thank you, Mayor Bob. Terry Heaton and myself met with the Ways and Means Committee at 4:30 this afternoon and reviewed the proposed resolution in front of you. The committee voted to recommend this to the council this evening. There are two bond issues contemplated here, and the Utility Commission Wednesday evening will be taking a similar action. The first bond issue, 2007A, is an electric revenue bond issue. It is being issued in the amount of $4.5 million, and it supports the construction of a $7.3 million electrical substation called the Southwest Substation, located behind the water treatment plant, that will generally serve the southwest quadrant of Marshall. The other bond issue, 2007B, is a refunding of a water-related bond issue that was originally done in support of the water treatment facility constructed around the time frame 1998. So it is the Utility Commission's recommendation, as is the Ways and Means Committee recommendation, that this resolution be adopted. And with me tonight is Terry Heaton, that can talk about these issues and the economics of these issues in more detail if the council so desires.
Okay, thank you, Brad. Welcome, Terry.
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, Brad has done such a nice job of describing the bond issues that I maybe will just add a few items. The new bonds are for a 15-year term. We are estimating that this is for the $4.5 million new bond. We're estimating interest rates in the range of about 4.12%, and that will result in debt service of about $405,000 a year. Again, these bonds will be paid, they're not general obligation bonds, they're revenue bonds, and so the sole source of repayment is from the electric and water utility. The refunding bonds, the 1998 bonds, this is the $5,045,000 bond issue. This issue is being done only for the purpose of savings. We're estimating interest rates of 4.16%, and if those rates hold for the next month until the sale on April 18th, the savings will be in dollars, future dollars, $350,985. Present value, bringing back to today's dollars, $259,000. And one of the measures that we've used for determining whether it is a good refunding or not is that the present value savings as a percentage of the refunded debt is at least 3%. In this case, although because it's a current refunding, it's not required to meet that, it is well beyond 3%. It's at 4.691%. And of course, there's savings of staff time by doing both issues together, the new money and the refunding as well. And there's a lot of work that has been done with staff and to make these bank qualified so that it gets the lowest interest rate. And I've handed out interest rates table that was also distributed at the Ways and Means Committee. And as you can see, the bond market continues to have low interest rates, record low rates. Going back 2002 through today, we're still at record lows, so a very good time to go to the market as well. The resolution asks for your approval for Springstead to proceed with the sale of both bond issues on April 18th at 11:30 a.m. And further, it gives authority to the commission to award the sale based on the lowest bid later that day at 5:30. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you, Terry. Questions?
Mayor, just as a general picture, Terry, if you could touch on the back of page 15 or on the back of 11-9 for the council, the integration of the new bonds with the other bonding as far as the debt picture within the utilities. Could you just...
We did an analysis of the debt coverage, and where we've, on page 15, the first two columns are the new projected debt on the new money of about $405,000. The second column is the refunded debt with the projected new interest rate, and then how that fits in with the remaining debt that it's outstanding. So the total outstanding debt is then 2.2 million, the third last column, and falling off from there. We had determined what the ability for coverage is, and the net revenues available are in the neighborhood of about $6 million. Dividing that by 2.2, we were getting coverages closer to 3%. Well, this is, 2.89 is the number. So the coverage is close to almost 3 times. That means from the remaining money, the debt can be covered 3 times over. In addition, we looked at doing some blending of the future debt with the debt that is falling off and delaying. And the difference in the coverage was so minimal that we concluded that to just have level debt for the 15 years made the most sense. So that's a little explanation of the analysis that was being done there.
Which goes a long ways in the capital improvement plan that the utilities is doing and taking on the projects and the system enhancements.
Mike?
Terry, would you just comment on the refinancing, what potentially could happen between now and the time you award it? As you brought up to the Ways and Means, that if something were to change, that part of it wouldn't occur?
Sure. As you know, the market can be volatile. It's improved just lately, and the savings can move around quite a bit. And so if it turns out that shortly before the sale or sometime between now and the sale date, the interest savings could be less, there's several options, and one is we can stop at any point, before we print an official statement, or even the Friday before the sale, or that week, or as I say, the sale's on Wednesday, so it could be Monday before the sale, just pull it if we think the savings aren't there. And we're talking about getting down to very insignificant savings where we'd rather wait for interest rates to improve. And at that point, our fee, the bond attorney's fee, several of these fees are not paid unless the bond transaction goes through, and the rating agencies and some of the other fees would only be paid if we actually got to that point. So we will monitor between now and the date of sale the steps that we're taking and make sure that the rates don't change significantly, and talk with staff if there is a change.
That answer your question?
Yep. And the other thing in the resolution itself, on your page 11-15, second to bottom line, Brad brought that to our attention at the Ways and Means. From the net revenue of the municipal electric and water systems, because the one is a refinancing and that's of an old water. So that would need to be included.
Charlie?
I guess I got a couple questions for Terry. Terry, you said this is going to be the bank certified bonds, that we get $10 million a year in those, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and then how much of a savings in interest would they bring being bank certified?
The savings, it depends on the market. Right now, it could be 5 to 10 basis points, 0.1%, and on several million. On this bond alone, it's 10 basis points would make a difference of about $56,000.
Okay, and I just got to wonder if, using that at this particular time for financing, would that change? If we didn't make bank certified, would it be less than 3% savings on the refinance? It would probably still be more than 3%.
It would still be more than 3%. And how this is being, we didn't talk about the bank qualification with this group, but we did with the Ways and Means Committee. There's been a lot of work done by both the city, the utilities, and the hospital's been in the discussions to see the allocation of the $10 million. The city believes they'll be issuing bonds in the range of about $5 to $5.5 million, and that left about $4.5 million for the utility for their needs. Even though their projects were at the $7.3 million level, they're paying cash for that difference so that they can stay in the $10 million range. Crossover refundings or advanced refundings would count as part of that $10 million, but because this is a current refunding, meaning the call date is July 1 of 2007, it doesn't count towards that $10 million. So that one is just being done in the
So we'd still have $5.5 million.
That's correct.
That we can use within the city for these projects that come up this summer.
And still stay bank qualified. And if there's a surprise, It's the best intentions. This bond issue will be bank qualified because at this point, we expect that to be under 10 million. And as we go through, if there's another bond issue, if there would be a surprise after we get past the 10 million, then that one would be non-bank qualified. So it's not that you can't issue, it's just that those that you issue
But you're
have
just
to
not
assume
going to
the
save as
under 10.
much for the city as compared to the utilities.
Pardon me?
I said if we couldn't refinance, couldn't have bank qualified bonds for the city later, the city would be paying a little bit more interest on those bonds.
That's
correct.
That could be, but I know a fair amount of time has been spent.
Okay.
Annually, Charlie, we work with Mike and the hospital, and we coordinate our need to bond. And I can speak from the utilities perspective, and I assume it'd be the case for the hospital. We wait for Mike to work with his staff to come up with what are the bonding needs, and then we try to fit in under the $10 million cap. And as we looked in the past, there's been years where we've not needed to get up to $10 million, quite a few years. But when we are in a low interest rate environment and a lot of capital improvements being made in the community, it makes sense to take advantage of both of those things.
I agree with you. I'm not arguing up. I just wondered if at this time, if we use up that bank qualification and the city wants to use some bank qualification later, she answered the question that was 5.5 million that we'd have later on that we could use as bank certified, and I'm happy with that. That's fine.
Okay, other questions?
It's not a question, but the Ways and Means set met at 4:30 and is recommending to the council the adoption of the resolution with that little change of adding and water system.
And are you making that motion?
Yes.
Okay, motion for the recommendation as recommended by the Council Ways and Means Committee, made by Mike, seconded by Larry. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 12, consider the introduction of the ordinance, amending the ordinance pertaining to moving buildings permitting moving buildings. Glenn.
Well, thank you, Mayor and Council. This one was an ordinance that was inadvertently deleted from our last ordinance book, and so we're asking for it to be reinstated as shown and calling for the public hearing at our next meeting.
Is there a motion to introduce and call for the hearing? Motion by Charlie. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Larry. Discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Agenda item number 13, consider the agreement between Western Community Action Incorporated and the City of Marshall and Lyon County for the Marshall Area Transit Building Project. The action then would be the approval of the architectural services agreement with Group 2 Architects for the Transit Building Project. Mike?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to pull up, got this one. We have with us tonight Janetta Gary, Transit Director for Western Community Action. She's here along with a recommendation that we have from the Council Public Improvement Transportation Committee on a project that, Jeanette, how many years have we been working on this?
2002 to start.
2002 to start. But fairly extensive the last 4 years trying to find funding to bring this back before the council. What you have before you tonight is an agreement between the City of Marshall, Lyon County, and Western Community Action on a proposed transit building facility. Jeanette was successful in going out and soliciting funding from the state of Minnesota to the tune of about $500,000 to be brought to the community to help in the construction and development of a new transit facility. The location that is proposed for this is approximately 1.03 acre site down at the Marshall Street Department. Glenn had to remind me that as we use this aerial for you tonight, don't assume that all of those piles are still in those locations. As you look at that site, they have been cleaned up. That site has been reorganized. But this aerial photo dates back to, Glenn, what, 5 years? 5 years ago. So our purpose in this was to show you approximately where this is located within the confines of Kossuth Avenue as it winds its way through the street department area and the park, and its location relative to all of the properties and the buildings on our property. The proposed project is an 11,640 square foot building, of which 10,000 square foot is essentially cold storage garage with slight heating and a wash bay. And then you have a 1,640 square foot dispatch office. Westcap is proposed to relocate from the building currently across the street on the upper portion of the bank out to this facility once it's constructed. Included in your packet is an estimate of cost ranging from about $717,000 to $760,000, with a breakdown after you remove the $500,000 grant, leaving a range of about $217,000 to $260,000 to be split between the City of Marshall and Lyon County. That split arrangement on a 75-25 basis based on the approximate number of vehicles that are being stored and utilized in the proposed facility. We've identified the range of contributions to the two entities. We had included just under $115,000 in our 2007 budget. We've come to determine after the architect finalizing the project and Ways and Means taking a look at the project and decisions made. Again, this is one of the areas of the community that soils is a challenging issue as far as the excavation that we have to go through to bring back in Glenna Class 5 to recompact it for sub-base preparation, and the addition of the transit dispatching office was an add kind of late in the project. The agreement that you have before you has been developed between the three parties. It's been approved by Western Community Actions Board on the transit, subject to final review by their attorney, and I think we've had just about all of his comments. To date, Lyon County is considering this action at their formal board meeting tomorrow morning. And in it, I have to give credit to our city attorney for a lot of guidance and development in this. But I think, as you can see, the city is providing the site with an identified dollar value. The state of Minnesota would contribute $500,000, and the city and county the balance of that. Should the property ever cease being utilized, or the building being utilized for transit purposes, in accordance with Exhibit D attached in the back of that agreement, is the actual process that we would have to go through to dispose of that building and/or facility or utilization of that. That'll be governed in the grant agreement between the state of Minnesota and Westcap. And so, working with the Ways and Means, PIT committee, we attempted to put language in there that would protect our providing of the site in the process. Planning, or the Public Improvement Transportation, met on March 12th. We reviewed all of the elements that are contained in the memo that you have, and their recommendation to the council tonight is the approval of the building site at the street department location, that the council consider entering into the joint agreement with Westcap and Lyon County, and support city funding up to a maximum of $195,000 for the project, with funding from either the liquor fund or 429. I reviewed this with the finance director, and collectively he and I are recommending that we probably utilize the liquor fund for the city's share of the funding. Assuming you approve it tonight, as I said, it'll go to the county commissioners tomorrow. As part of it, Jeanette, in her expertise in managing and operating the transit system, wasn't real desirous of having to handle the day-to-day construction of the transit building. I've worked with our city engineer and building staff to take a look at the city essentially managing that, which is why the architectural agreement is attached as an agenda item following this action, assuming you approve this action. And that would be for us to assist them in the process. The grant would actually come from the state of Minnesota to Westcap, and they in turn then would funnel the funding to us, assuming we agree to take on that responsibility. I think that in our vantage point is kind of a recap of what's gone on for the last 4 years. I would defer to Jeanette if she wanted to offer any additional comments as the council take a look at it. In addition to what we have on the overhead there, I suppose I can't reach it if you'll move forward. We've got two additional pictures that are worth taking a look at. Just the up and down one, yep. You just have to do it closer to just to the computer. Then go to the down one. It should move. Here. What do you want? There you go. That's the building on that 1 acre site. That's the conceptual layout at present. And the building design, if you want to go to the next one more, provides for the storage of, Jeanette, what was it, 12 buses? That went through quite a review and scrutiny with the public improvement and West Cap and Lyon County, with the dispatching office containing about 1,640 square feet. So that in and of the project, Jeanette, subject to what you'd like to add.
Well, thank you, Mike, and council members and mayor. I just want to let you know that this has been a very interesting project. I never thought a steel-structured facility could go in so many different directions. But I do want to thank especially Mike and Glenn and the rest of the council members that have really worked hard with us to explore all the different possibilities within the community and within the county that we could possibly look at having a storage facility. It made sense that with the dispatch center and the growing need for regional coordination throughout our whole region, that to have our dispatch center co-located with the bus drivers was a good operational sense in doing it now. And I have to also thank Ron Helgerson and Group 2 because they've done an excellent job in still giving us the space and the facility needs that we would need, but bringing the price down. We had some surprises, of course, with the soil corrections, and that happened after everything had been submitted. We got the letter of award August 3rd, 2006 from Minnesota Department of Transportation. At that time, with the award of $500,000, all that remained left to do was to finish up the scope of work and get that submitted, and that's where we are at today. So the award of funding has basically been awarded. The final contract is what we are submitting as soon as we get all signatures on this agreement and approval from the council and the county. So again, I just want to thank you and request that you consider the work and time. I think the facility is something that will be of great benefit to the community as well as the county. We have currently 11 buses. We try to keep them rotating. I see transportation as only growing. It's something that isn't going to go away within our area. There's a lot of need for transportation that we haven't even tapped yet. But we're working on the funding, and it's just good to have a home for these buses and our public transportation. So with that, I want to thank you. And if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them for you now.
Okay, thank you, Jeanette. Questions for Jeanette or Mike?
Is this land on a paved street? Is this a paved street? No? Is that going to be improved once the building's built, before the building's built, or?
We don't have plans to improve the roadway directly in front of the Matt building. We do have plans in the works for improvement of Kasuth. That's the curved street area, but the area in front of the building, we don't have plans for improvement.
Other questions?
We've tried to, in its location and its positioning within the site, that should transit operations ever cease and we go through the disposal process, is that if it's something that were to be acquired by the city, could be utilized with street operations, and we've tried to lay it out and try to be cognizant of it fitting in within the overall street utilization down there.
We also have the setbacks shown on the property, just as if it was a property line, so that if in fact there was a street ever put in front, it would respect the setbacks required in that district.
Other
I would
questions?
move the resolution.
Second.
Motion by Charlie, seconded by Dan to enter into the agreement with Western Community Action and Lyon County.
You have a new page in front of you, a new number 19, that did come from the West Cap attorney. So that was added in today, and then we renumbered numbers 19 and 20 to incorporate his recommendation.
That's still consistent with the motion?
We need to make the motion as paid for out of the liquor fund? Does it need to be in the motion? We're going to do it part of that motion.
Discussion, did you get that? Okay. His motion does incorporate that the $195,000 city contribution.
Up to.
The source of that is the liquor reserve. Okay, discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. The second action then will be the architect's agreement. Any comments on the architect's agreement? Mike?
We'd recommend approval of that proposed contract, subject to final review and approval by our city attorney. You can see we've attempted to lay it out for design, development, construction documents, bidding, and construction inspection services. The timeline that is included or attached would provide for the facility to have design begin here this month, with the goal of being able to receive bids and have council award sometime in July, with occupancy in January of '08.
Questions?
Mike, the professional fees that's in that projected budget, that's at $53,000, that's,
Yep.
that 49 will come out.
That's correct.
That's it. Okay.
Any other discussion on it, or any other questions? If
I
not,
move that recommendation.
motion by Charlie, seconded by Larry. Discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Thank you. Agenda item number 14. First, we'll have 4 items from public safety, the first of which is the declaration and disposal of surplus property. Was this nice Rob Yant, Director of Public Safety. This is a recommendation to basically donate the forfeited bicycles to a charitable organization with Department of Corrections.
Yes, they're abandoned that we picked up, but yes, it's bikes that we picked up that haven't been claimed by their owners. And instead of doing our normal, just because of the volume, to turn them over to Department of Corrections for their utilization.
Okay. Questions on this recommendation?
Yes, Rob. Who incurs the expense of picking these up or delivering them to X, wherever that is?
I guess I'm not entirely sure. We might, because we transport it anyhow. I'm not 100% sure. We haven't done this before. If I can get them to pick them up, I'd do that.
Well, I would hope they would pick them up, yes.
Yeah.
I don't think we should be paying to dispose of them.
We just need to get rid of them, to be honest. We just, I don't know if anyone been in the law enforcement center. We have a storage facility for bikes, and usually about a month to 6 weeks past the auction, that's full. So then it's wherever we can find other places to start putting them. We have to keep them for 90 days, so that's really about what we have room for, and not the rest that we accumulate in the subsequent months.
Well, the reason for the question is I'm assuming they are going someplace, Department of Corrections,
Yes.
certainly not in southwest Minnesota.
Yes.
Someone's going to have to.
Yes, we're not going to transport them outside of Marshall.
Okay.
Okay. Other questions? If not, is there a motion to allow the disposal of the...
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Motion by Dan, seconded by Charlie. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Second action would be to consider the approval of the amendment to the CAT terrorism grant contract. Once again, Rob?
Yes, this is a grant that we've been awarded. It's for $50,000, and basically just didn't have time to implement, so we were able to get an extension, so we didn't lose the funding, but it needs a formal contract re-signing. And so this would basically give us, instead of through the end of March, to do it, to have through the end of December. Two of the things we're looking at beyond, been here with equipment, but it also funds some training and exercising, and that in particular is something we'd like to retain the funds for to try and utilize at a later date.
Any questions? If not, is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Motion by Larry, second by Charlie. Discussion?
Yes, is there any kind of a breakdown of where this money plans to be spent? It talks in very general terms, but it never identifies what exactly it's going to be spent for and how much for each item.
No, because it's just re-extending the current grant. The bulk of it was, I don't remember the exact amounts, but it was like $27,000 for SCBA. And face mask, $8,000 was for biochemical materials, which I think we're going to go in and I have to change some of the amounts. The SCBA's increased in price from when we did this. We're not looking at getting the terrorism stuff. I'm going to probably get new radios, and then it's like $5,000 for training and $5,000 for exercises. But council has seen the grant before when we originally got it, but it's been a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Any other discussion on the motion? Not? Call for a vote on the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. And then third is a presentation of the strategic business plan for the Merit Training Center, and Rob, you'll introduce this?
Yes, what I'd like to do is actually introduce representatives from the Merit Commission that are here, in particular starting with Stan Brewers, who is the chair and will be the primary spokesperson for us on this. Also, and I'd like all the commission members to come up and maybe stand off to the side, except for Stan as our spokesperson. Warren Jorgensen with Minskew is Fire EMS, Mark Bureau with ADM, Dawn Rainier is the Director of Customized Training with Minnesota West, and then Mike Bodingheimer is our council representative besides myself. So I think we're all available to answer questions. Stan will step you through this, and I've got again, everyone got a copy of it, but I've got a copy with the budget summary with you too.
Thank you, Rob. First of all, several months ago, we were in here, we asked for monies from you guys, and you gave that to us. And that's all comes down with the Interact Business Group, and that's what this thick booklet is all about. We're going to try and condense it here as fast as possible so everybody kind of understands where we're at. And one of the things I want to do, Warren's going to help me out with this a little bit. There's some very key issues that we want to touch on, because I'm sure when you guys looked at the total number of the dollars that we would like to go to the state of Minnesota for, I'm sure some of the jaws fell to the floor. Is that better? And so I'll get started with that particular part of it. Back in 1997, we started the particular phase, and at that particular time, it was to get the fire apparatus building and the fire drill tower. At that particular time, it was projected that was going to be between $17 and $19 million over so many year period. I don't know, remember what that was, Warren? Or how many years was that originally going to be? Yeah, the phase one, no, the whole project, when they first did this back in 1997. I guess that probably doesn't make any difference. The thing that we ended up doing is the city was able to get $880,000 for that station that's out there, apparatus building as we call it, and then we got the $400,000 for that drill tower. Since that particular time, that facility out there sat stagnant. I was not able to be here last week. I'm hoping that everybody got a chance to tour that location out there, and I'm sure the guys did a very good job of showing that to you. That phase one you'll find, if you have any questions on the cost on that, is page 91 and through 93 in that booklet. The next thing I'll go on to is the proposal issues. I think one of the things that we had to put together
was the current project cost and the income data, and that's where the Interact Business Group came into play. And all these things that you see on this particular page, that's on page 20 and 21. And we're going to break that down just a little bit for you a little later on here when you see that. Second part was need to develop the revenue generating props. That was the driving course and the shooting range and many of the other props. And again, you'll see them on those pages. It breaks it down quite a bit. What we want to do is we want to take this to the state of Minnesota this year. We know that there's probably no chance that we're going to be able to get any monies. Obviously, 08 is their bonding year, but we want to get started now. We probably should have gotten started earlier, but because of the way things have held us up, we're right at the end here where we need to try and get started with this thing. And one of the things that and I'll explain a little bit more of it later, is that we want to take this to the state, and we want to ask for monies with no match. I know that's a high bill to ask for, but we'll be able to explain that. And like I said, Warren's going to be able to touch on a few things that we think will help us quite a bit. There's no guarantee. We understand that. But what we're looking for is basically we need the permission tonight for you guys to go looking for those funding sources and the foundations to look for those monies that are out there. And also one of the other things that we really want to do is take a look at what we're also going to do is go for some federal funding. We're not only going to take it to the state, we're going to ask these same people to see what the federal government will do. If I understand that correctly, that's not for brick and mortar, but it's for the props and those types of things. So we're going to take this one extra step, not just the state of Minnesota, because it is such a large bill. And this is where I would like Rob to maybe, Warren to step in, because this is sort of his expertise. But some of the things that we've had with this training facility out there and not really having a driving course and some of the other props is we have missed out on a lot of revenues for that particular location out there. And but the big thing is the driver's training and the law enforcement. And Warren, if you would help me explain that.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Warren Jorgensen, and I work with the Minnesota State Colleges and Universities Fire Remit Safety Center. As noted on the screen there, this project's not new. It's been around a long time in this city, trying to get this facility up and running. And we've had a number of opportunities. If the site would have been up and running, we could have been bringing some income into this community. Another activity, I've received a call today from the Minnesota Grain and Feed Association looking to do a workshop in this part of the state, which will entail using grain bins and agricultural storage bin containers, and we don't have any out there to be used at, and I'm not so sure how we're going to do that, but we're going to try to keep that training here. But nevertheless, MnDOT, State Highway Patrol, all of those folks are absolutely clamoring at a location to do driver training, and our law enforcement community has the same types of needs. I met in the last month up at Camp Ripley with State Patrol and MnDOT where they're trying to get Camp Ripley to incorporate into their $42 million project some driver training activity, because they can't get into the two existing sites that we have in the state of Minnesota. One's at St. Cloud and one's at Dakota County Technical College. So the opportunity is here for us if we can just keep this thing moving forward and getting some props out there. You'll notice at the bottom of that screen it talks about the state plan for firefighter or for training facilities. Currently, I think we presented this to the council members a number of weeks or years ago, but there is a statewide plan for training centers around the state of Minnesota. You have the dark bolded lines on that state map represent the regions where there are supposed to be Tier 2 training facilities, and the Merit Center is a Tier 2 training facility in that plan. And to be honest with you, the Southwest region, this project is the only one that's playing by the rules of that the legislature laid out a number of years ago. The Tier 1 facility is currently planned at Camp Ripley, and a Tier 1 facility is a type of training activity that is a small amount of personnel that need to do that type of thing, but we don't need to duplicate those all over the state. For example, the mass statewide disaster drill type activities that involves department heads and that type of thing would take place up there. Tier 2 type facilities are exactly what the Merit Center activities have that you have in front of you in that report from the Interact group. And the Tier 3 activities are those that are done in a community, local community such as, the city of Marshall or any other community in the state of Minnesota that a department can do in their community, such as a fire department, for example, might be able to do some car fire training evolutions, but they would not be able to do a bulk plant training evolution or something like that. So that's the type of things that are done at the Tier 2 levels. But nevertheless, the Merit Center is still in line with the overall state plan of having these types of facilities put in around the state of Minnesota. So the other thing that's important to realize is that these state training facilities project is part of the Commissioner of Public Safety, and if you folks approve us moving forward with this project tonight, we need to get this document in their hands so it becomes part of their push for the bonding issue in 08 also, and that's part of this whole process. So.
And we'll go on to the next page, the funding 2008 bonding bill. The phase 2 on that is 23 million, 23.4 in that territory. It's broke down, as you guys can see on there, and those are pages 91, 92, and 93. And without me actually getting into it, one of the like the addition of the existing building that we have there, that's basically the classrooms and administration's offices. And I know that the Midwest was looking to move out in that, would like to go out into that place out there, and that would be part of that, obviously, or could be part of that. The land on there, I think that might be one of the questions, and we put that on there, that, it may be an arbitrary site. I'll get into that, and I'm sure you'll see the pictures that are on there as well. So that breaks that down for that particular part. Phase 3 is approximately about $5.9 million. And again, this is basically more of the props and additional buildings, additional shooting range support, EVOC administration buildings, soft costs of 20%, site work contingency. That's the Phase 3, because this, again, going back in history when this thing was originally put together, it was set up to do 3 phases. So when the reason why the second number there is the bigger in the Phase 2 at the $23.4 million is that when we had the Interact group put this together, these were the contingency numbers that they came up with to make this a working source. And the huge part of that is that driving course out there. And but basically, driving and law enforcement. Fire department stuff that we can do, that would be a bigger part of the Phase 3. As you guys can see by the picture up there is an overhead picture. That's basically where we're at now. Nothing has changed with that. On the west, or on the left-hand side, there is an additional land that we are arbitrarily taking a look at. That is somewhere in the area of just that particular, the top section. Warren, will you kind of point that out to them? Here, this part from this road on up here is approximately about 120 acres, approximately. I don't know exactly. And the bottom section down below that is approximately around 40 acres. Looking at that and taking a look at the dollar amounts that we had, that's where we come up with the $1.6 million. $1.6 million. That again,
And the reason for that is for that driving course. We took a look at trying to condense that driving course onto the one half of the properties that we have now without any additional land, and it absolutely just was not going to work without having the safety, with having all the props up there and the wetlands, as you can see through there. The darker spots that you'll see on there is the part of the Phase 2. The lighter stuff that you see in there and the lighter buildings where you can see that, it says future on there, that would be the Phase 3 of this particular part. And then the last page I wanted to go to is, we just handed those out. These are different things that were just done, and these are law enforcement, or are they law enforcement and fire department only. These were projects that were done throughout the United States, very similar to ours, and these were the average costs of those particular systems being put together. Yeah, strictly fire and rescue. And last but not least, I think one of the things that's really important, I try and word this properly, and that is, we realize that what we would like to ask for, and it isn't what we want to go after the full $30 million with the state of Minnesota. We know that is not always reality, but what we would like to do is to have your permission to take that to the state and let them come back to tell us what we can do with this as far as phases. If they were say, well, we won't give you that, we'll give you 15 this phase, or these next 2 years and 15 the next, or 10, 10, 10. We don't care, but we would like to at least take that to those and ask for no matching funds. And we also realize that if there is some matching funds in there, then we have to go back to square A and take it back to the committee, regroup, put some new numbers together, and then reassess it and go back that way. So we know that reality of having to do some matching funds is there. But we spoke with Marty Seifert, and like I said, he suggested that obviously it doesn't hurt to go after that. I think one of the things that Warren talked on in some of these groups with these other, let me find it here on the page. The Tier 2 Merit Center, 6 regional sites, Warren. One of the things, would you explain to these guys, you can probably do it better than I know, that when they first originally tried to put these things together, there were supposed to be 6 sites throughout the state, with CAT teams included. And one of the things that I understand, I'm not able to explain it as well as Warren could, and that is, one of the things that the Merit Center did correct, that none of the other sites, the other 5 sites did, is that we followed all the rules, and I think that's one of the aces in our back pocket that no other facilities got. Like Warren said, we've got the Commission of Public Safety that's behind us, and we have many other groups, and obviously Mike's going to touch on some things as far as having somebody to lobby for us and the other things. But anyway, again, I'll leave it at that. If you guys have questions, we'll try and answer them all.
Okay, let's open it up for questions.
I guess it's not a question, but there have been many hours of effort put in by a lot of people in the last 3 to 4 months. We're getting to know each other as well as our families. I think we've been having enough meetings. Put a lot of effort into it.
Rob, did I miss anything? Is there anything you want to add to it? Dawn or Mark? Please.
With the driving course, you might want to point out is the fact that the schools also are very interested in that and the impact that perhaps has as well.
Yeah. I think one of the things that Mark brings up a very good point. I know what the key for this Merit Center, you guys, and this is very important, and that's why we want to go after that land, and especially putting up that driving course, because we know we can draw revenues immediately. The 2 closest places to drive, like Warren had said, is St. Cloud and Sioux City, Iowa, and Dakota County. There's nothing out here, and the Department of Transportation is biting at the bit because they can't get into Camp Ripley to use their facility because it's all done by the government, correct?
Camp Berkeley doesn't have a facility for them to do driving. They have a very limited amount of streets up there that they're basically using at the guard camp. Dakota County has a driving course. Problem is that they can't, it's so busy they can't get in there. The St. Cloud facility across the road from the prison, if you folks are familiar with that, the Highway Patrol can't get in and make use of that place after 4:30 in the afternoon because they shut it down. And the Highway Patrol, they need to practice at night. So there's, that's the kinds of problems folks are running into in existing locations. And that's just law enforcement and MnDOT, and that's not counting all the other industrial groups that they're typically looking at driving activities. So,
Warren, could you go a little bit further in that, because that's the one of the things that I was looking for here is some assurance that there was the market participation or the customer participation. The survey indication, was a bit shallow in this. The report is very detailed about what the projects would be, but as far as the regional buy-in, the regional utilization, or the assurance that the customer is there, other than anecdotal, is there, prior to the investment being made, is there any obligation that they will need to utilize the props that are there, and not just the driver's training, but also the fire safety, the tier 2 rather than the tier 3, and doing it in their own locations?
yeah, one of the problems that we've had up to this point is that we haven't had a document published and produced like this that we can now take to the other state agencies, for example, and say, here, this is what our plans are at this location, and start to get some, in black and white buy-in commitment to it. My meetings with MnDOT and the Highway Patrol, in just those two organizations, if we had this place here, they'd be using it. But the problem is that, we're limited in the entire state of Minnesota, just 2 locations right now. But I think with this document completed, now gives us a tool to go forward and try to find other funding sources and start to lock up real serious commitments in this whole process. And we need those. We need written contracts, written agreements that say people are going to utilize this facility.
Just to interject one thing, I guess, and there's 2 things not addressed strongly. Stan mentioned one of them that we hope to address, and tied into the driving is professional for the industrial and public safety driving, but also the novice driver. And that wasn't integrated well into the final report. It's outside their normal frame of reference. But the other thing is just maybe some frame of reference for what goes on. Someone oversees that for the 19 counties of Minnesota West. So she might be able to offer what goes on now for either fire or driving training, if you had any questions for that from her. Minnesota West obviously is going to be a key partner for this. But she would have some frame of reference for the correct potential.
I think one of the other things I forgot to mention was that driver's education just for our own, the city of Marshall. Pat Hirschfeld's been part of this committee as well, whenever we've needed him to be there. And that number could run anywhere, if I remember right, was between 200 and 300 kids a year that we could use that course out there for immediately. And not only that, with the simulation machines that we would want to go with, that could be put to use immediately.
Well, it's just, we don't talk on the other areas, and there isn't specifics because they didn't have the technological stuff. But there's strong interest in terms of ethanol safety. That's sort of a mushrooming thing, and it looks like it's going to be with us in some form, whether it's corn or some sort of fiber base, but both for people to deal with it from a response industrially to first responder training. And that's also something that we view as being non-traditional with what we're looking at approaching this facility be able to address.
Well, I think one of the things that hasn't been mentioned is the piggybacking. If the Twin Cities or someplace, or even Sioux Falls, Iowa, if they wanted to send someone up for a particular type of training, and they've putting them on the road, driving up here for this 3 or 4 hour training, if they could piggyback that with some other training, like the defensive driving for the ambulance people or whatever it might be, and make a full day type thing, or maybe 2 days of training in a concentrated period of time and have options, that would be a big selling point for this type of facility.
Something I had not mentioned before too, and that was with this particular number at the $30.657 million. If we wait another 5 years with an inflation rate of 7% per year, 5 years, we're looking at having to go after about $38.4 million. So it's taken off on us. Again, going back to almost 10 years ago, when it was $17 and $19 million, we're already up to 30, and we want to try and really get this thing rock and rolling if we possibly can. We need you guys' permission.
Other questions for Stan or Warren?
Well, and the one thing they have not been brought up, if we get this type of facility in this region, it's going to be a big economic development thing. I mean, we're going to have a lot of people coming in, staying. The Minnesota utility brings people in from other states for somewhat extended periods of time, 2, 3, 4 days, that are spending money here in town, contributing to the economic development.
Yeah, the thing with the facility is it would operate 7 days a week, especially the weekends.
Other questions? If not, thank you, Stan. Thank you, Warren. Thank you, Rob. Which leads us into the authorization to request state funding and retain a lobbyist to support this. Mike, do you have this?
Well, I'll provide the background information that, per the committee's request, is that I contacted Mr. Ed Kane from Legislative Associates, Inc. Ed was the individual, and LAI was the firm that we used a number of years ago, back in the mid-1990s, when we elicited and solicited funding from the state of Minnesota through the Department of Natural Resources in the state, as well as at the federal level for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers program. Ed and his firm were quite helpful in assisting us in that process. We then subsequently used LAI to assist the city when we first went after funding to build the apparatus maintenance storage facility, as well as the 5-story training tower. And I guess I should point out, contrary to some people's thoughts or beliefs, that the one thing we did is we did receive funding to build those facilities. They are debt-free. They are not an ongoing obligation or a hindrance or a cash flow issue to us as far as the construction and the debt on the facility. So we got money out of the bonding bill for the first facility, and the second one was a Department of Public Safety grant. The committee asked me to talk with Ed and to take a look at what he would feel would be the approach that we would have to use to take a look at beginning to proceed into the state process, interacting politically with the Department of Public Safety, some of the various committees. And so he attempted to outline, for the committee's benefit, kind of an outline of what would be necessary. And his expectation was, and taking a look at it, is that we'd have to do some work here in the first 3 months, March through May, to at least make some inquiries, to possibly get some hearings before some committees, probably not with any expectation that there would be any funding in 2007. It would require us to continue at the conclusion of the legislative session to doing some preparatory work this fall in the time frame September through December, to again try to bring the committee out here to various committees to take a look at the project and the site and what the Merit Center Committee has put together, with the idea that activities would be initiated prior to the 2008 legislative session, and then looking ahead, he identified what would need to be done in the 4-month time frame associated with the 2008 legislative session. We have talked with Marty, we have talked with Senator in regards to the project. At this point, I'm not certain anybody that totally knows what dollar amount we should be looking at, and so part of the stage that I think the Merit Center Committee is at in beginning this process is cultivating some fact-finding and some interaction up at the legislature as well as the state agencies to see what funding possibilities might exist to support these endeavors. They did allude that we don't have funding sitting around to do any matching at this point, but I think they're looking at your assistance in at least going up and beginning the process. And so as we take a look at it, the proposal, if you encompass putting together the 2007-2008 legislative process, the proposal was at about $16,500. I've continued to talk to Ed to see if that could be fine-tuned. I did get a response finally is that we might be able to cut 1 month out of the process or save about $1,500, but you're looking at about $15,000 spread over the 2 years to go up and to interact in this process. It doesn't come with any guarantees on any success relative to funding. Whether you split it in 2 years and take on 2007 at this point and see where that goes versus 2008, that choice rests with you, but his indication is that any work that he would do on behalf of the city and or the committee is estimated about $1,500 a month. Should there be a desire to pursue something additional at the federal level, that would probably take an additional appropriation or request on top of this, and I don't have a firm number for you to do that at this point.
Mention, it's more informational, we asked Minnesota West as far as cost sharing on the lobbyists, and they're not in a position to commit to that now, so that wouldn't be part of the formal consideration, but that's something that they're looking at, and they may be able to come in to offset some of our costs, especially if we end up going for federal funding in the future. So there's some possibility of it, although no commitment tonight.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I guess I would like to have you comment on, most of the council is new and is not aware of the type of job that Ed does. We've gone through this with the Merit before and the flood control project, and I'm personally convinced that flood control project probably would not have been completed if we would have tried to do it without the aid of someone like that, both at the state and federal level.
Yeah, well,
He's good.
he certainly represented the city, and in that case, the majority of the funding was federal funding, and certainly the logistics and the attendance and just being there at the federal level took the employment of him, and he did a very effective job some 10 years ago when we were working on that project. Other questions?
If we're going to spend this $16,000, where would it come from?
The only sources I could at least identify for you, and whether you'd want to split that up and just do 2007 now with the idea that you'd address 2008 in the budgetary process, would be either mayor council contingency, liquor fund, 429 account, that those are probably about the three areas that would have some available resources that you could consider allocating.
If you do 07, how many months we're looking at 07?
07, you're looking at about 10,500, but I did talk to him that I might be able to get 1,500 or one month taken off in that process, somewhere out of that total. So you might be looking at about $9,000 in 2007 if you were to try to look at finishing out what's left of this legislative session and then all the prep work through the fall to get ready for the 08 session.
I would move the authorization to hire have Mike work out the details with him so he can get started immediately and work out the details and come back with a recommendation as to where the funding should come from. The recommended funding source. Sounds nice.
Motion by Mike, is there a second?
I just want to clarify, you're saying we're going to go forward with this project, and what Mike is going to bring back is how we're going to fund it, and how much it's going to be?
Well, I've given you the indication of what the
Just be
proposal
10.5
would
at
be.
the most, but maybe 9,000 this year? Are you talking 07, or are you talking for the whole project?
Starting immediately, we want him to have some presence at the legislature this spring yet, so starting immediately.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Motion by Mike, seconded by Charlie. And the motion was to engage Mr. Ed King in lobbyist activity specifically for this project for 2007. Beyond that, I would imagine would need to be a separate request, because that this, there's, whether or not there's a legislative interest in some of the things that are being outlined here clearly will be known by the end of the year, whether or not there's even a need to go further. And I'd also assume that if he's representing the city on this request, he would also be available to represent the city on some other issues of hearings, transportation, that type of thing that would be specific, similar to what he did with the flood control project. Any other discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Okay, 14E was added, and 14E is to consider the resolution to request funding for the Minnesota Department of Transportation through a cooperative agreement program for the East College Drive sidewalk project. We do have that resolution. Glenn, any comments on that?
No.
Any questions that the council has? It was on our table this evening. Basically, it's a necessary action in order to
receive funding.
To receive the funding from MnDOT. If there's no questions, I'd entertain a motion for that
I'll
resolution.
make a motion that we approve this resolution.
Motion by Charlie.
Second.
Seconded by Larry. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. And 14F was also added. This information is on our table this evening. This is the 14F is the railroad permits for the water main and sanitary sewer main crossings on the Main Street project. Glenn?
We just received these today, and we have reviewed them. We recommend approval subject to the review and approval of the city attorney, because they are pipeline licenses. Funding is shown in our recommendation for the individual items.
Glenn, in general, the purpose and the need to gain these, you might just touch on with the highway project.
Yeah, as for the Main Street project, we have both a water main and a sewer main that goes underneath the railroad tracks. Apparently, the railroad was there before we were, so we have the permit with them to put these facilities under their right-of-way.
Any questions for Glenn? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Mayor, I was looking at my...
Oh, Bill?
This just came about, I apologize for the lateness on this. I don't think many of you are aware that there's still going to be a median on Main Street, a raised concrete median. We discussed this several months ago, and kind of botched it up. I'll hand out a sheet that I just came upon.
You need to talk to the microphone.
For the record, Bill Ziegenhagen from Marshall Small Engine. And I came across this the other day with a meeting with Kim Jurgensen, looking at the Main Street project, and this is part of what went out with the bidding stuff that we talked about a couple weeks ago here at the council as far as the public hearing. Again, I'll apologize for not seeing this earlier. During the public hearing 2 weeks ago, this little median is not pictured on the things that we're looking at here in the council chambers. On the left one here, the courthouse is kind of the last thing. So we're past this a little bit. So if you look about in the middle of the page, you'll see the 705 and the Marshall Small Engine. There's 8th Street to the left of that property. And just out to the right, you'll see the access, which is the driveway to my piece of property. And then if you look in the center of the road, you'll see the proposed median on both sides of the railroad track. I did have a meeting with Dina and a couple other gentlemen from the DOT, and they are going to call and talk to the railroad people. It came quite high up. I did talk to Keith Burkhart, and he was aware of it, and he believes the purpose of these is because the road's going to be 12 feet wider, was his comment. And I said, I don't think the road's going to be 12 feet wider there if you go down by the courthouse, because we're going to add some parking in front of the courthouse. The street will be wider. But once you get past 7th Street, and correct me if I'm wrong, Glenn, I mean, it's 1 to 2 feet perhaps wider.
That's correct.
I think that would justify that. I think Keith's was the length of the arms, that the arms are as long as arms as they have. And they somehow thought they weren't going to be long enough. That's
Glenn,
what
you want to address this?
Yes, when this was brought to our attention, I did ask why those were there. And the response was it was a safety issue at railroad crossings with cross arms. There's been a tendency for vehicles to drive around the end of the cross arms. And this specifically was to prevent, discourage strongly, the driving around of the cross arms. So in order to drive around the cross arms in this configuration, you would actually have to go in oncoming traffic way back at the end of that median barrier. So it's specifically a design issue for safety at railroad crossings. It certainly does provide one more item for maintenance issues, but it's a safety issue. That's how it was described to me, and I don't know what Bill's conversation has been with them.
I did ask Dina Knudsen from DOT if there was a place that had these that I could go and visually see. She didn't know of any.
Yeah.
The other thing I said, could this be done with paint? And the other thing, if it is people cutting through the crosswalk and Rob left, the police station's right there. I mean, boy, it takes a lot of guts, I guess, to do that when you know that there's probably 10 cop cars sitting in the parking lot next to you. If you're going to cut through, they could pick you up at any time.
Bill, let me add just one thing. You know, we needed to, the previous discussion really had to do with the streetscape improvements. My question to Glenn is, you know, this is a MnDOT project, MnDOT dealing with the railroad. Do we even have any authority?
We do not, but in all cases, and that's what I was going to have for my discussion, is we're going to have several construction-related issues come in front of us. I think Bill is right in coming to the council on his own behalf, but I think in most issues, they will be MnDOT discussion and decision process. Now, the political process may be able to adjust some of those recommendations and decisions, and I think that's maybe what Bill is here for, is to get some awareness of the issue in front of his business. Specifically, I'll kind of step in for Bill here a little bit. It does show a closure of the driveway, the secondary driveway next to the railroad, adjacent to his property. It also originally, and I think what this one still does, show the closure of the driveway across the street next to the previous Marshall that Marshall Labs property, and we have also addressed that issue with MnDOT, and the reason we didn't have much input is because that is MnDOT right-of-way and property that is purchased right up to the edge of his building. So it's an issue that he has to work kind of directly with them. We certainly want to work with Bill as far as being kind of the local entity and you know, working with Bill to do what we can do to help him. But you're right. It's probably going to be a MnDOT issue, a MnDOT design, a MnDOT decision, whether or not to remove them or not. I believe the striping wouldn't be done. It'll either be installed or not installed. I'll go as far as to say that. I do believe Bill's right. I don't know if there's any other location that I'm aware of, but that's now the new standard adjacent to cross arms for issues of driving around them. Okay,
So
that's all I know.
In your conversations with MnDOT and with the adjoining property owners, you'll help facilitate some of that discussion.
I'll help facilitate it, and we try our best, but it's not our decision.
Like Glenn said, I mean, I just wanted to bring it to your attention. I don't think anybody knew this.
No.
I have met with MnDOT. They are in contact with the railroad, and when I talked to Keith Burkhardt, I mean, that was his reasoning for the additional 12 feet. And I just think it's a misunderstanding there, first of all, so hopefully that can take care of it. But I certainly really don't want access closed off in two directions to my business. So the Marshall Labs property, I have met with Dina on that, and that driveway will be put back in, and she has signed for that, so.
Well, very good. Thank you, Bill. The issue before us are the railroad permits to put the pipes underneath the railroad as you have outlined. Are there questions on that? If not, is there a motion?
I would move the recommendation that's been presented to us by staff.
Second.
Motion by Charlie, seconded by Larry. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. We'll move on then quickly to Councilmember Commission Board Liaison reports, unless Glenn, do you have anything more on that?
No.
Okay. Councilmember Commission Board Liaison reports. The EDA has not met since their last meeting. However, EDA members were involved in a booth and volunteering at the home show that was held not this past weekend, the weekend before. Regional Development Commission does have a two-day meeting this Thursday and Friday that I'll be attending. Mike?
None.
Larry?
Marsh Community Services met and just getting things ready to roll for spring. Planning and zoning met last week. Lack of a quorum has been moved to this week, and that'll be it.
Okay. Jenny?
Library Board met and talked about automation options and also budgeting options for the new library and how that should all come together.
Okay, thank you. Dan?
All I had was Housing Commission, and I did pass out to everybody copies of the two appraisals that were gathered for purchase of the, proposed purchase of the property next to Parkview Apartments. So everybody has a chance to look at it.
And Charlie?
I didn't make the Marsh Area Transit meeting. The Cable Commission, we met, talked some more about how we're going to promote the cable company and what's going to be happening coming up at the cable TV programs. We also had a question that came up about the van that we had budgeted for, if there's any progress, you know, Mike or anybody that going forward on the van.
We'll try to get some of these initial vehicles out of the way, and we'll probably have second round because police has some vehicles and that, so we'll add it into that.
Add that group? Okay. That's it.
Okay. Move on then, agenda item number 16, Councilmember individual items. Jenny?
Just a question about our council retreat and some of the things that we discussed there to kind of get things moving. How does that happen? How do things start to get moving? Is it council members who initiate that, or on the different topics. I'm thinking specifically the library and different things we discussed there too.
One of the things that I think we'll want to do, and, tonight was a full agenda item, but I think we want to have some time at our council meeting to have some discussion on that, on the follow-up from those recommendations. In addition to that, I think we also may want to, one of the suggestions was information prior, and maybe have some time where division heads may be available even prior to the council meeting if there's any specific questions and things, and that might help facilitate the follow-up of those things afterwards. So I guess what I'm saying is if it's going to get done, we're going to have to allocate some time to do it. So maybe on a future agenda, and that might be a better way of using our agenda item on pending agenda items. Perhaps call that, retreat action follow-up. Does that make sense? Okay. Larry?
None.
Charlie?
No, nothing.
Dan?
No, but just a little bit on where Jenny's, what she's coming from. I think she's, and I would like to see that too. I would like the library board to come to the city with some ideas on some funding maybe for the library. And we need to talk about that, and I'm not too sure it needs to be a referendum, but we could make a commitment going forward, kind of like we did with we just did it with the Matt Bus Garage. Is that kind of what you're thinking, Jenny?
Yeah.
I concur with that. That's all.
Mike?
Nothing.
Okay. The review of pending agenda items, any comments on the pending agenda items?
Got one.
Yes.
On the Camden Drive parking issue for PINT here, could I also add the downtown park, a request I made for 2-hour parking to that agenda if we need it?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
I wanted to add to that, I talked to you before the meeting about the 2-hour parking thing at the downtown park, and we added to that same meeting so that it's on the agenda.
And I'd like to also add designation of state aid routes and temporary parking restrictions for detour routes during the downtown construction. So we'll have a good agenda when you
Very good.
meet.
Agenda item number 18 is a determination by the city council to go into closed session pursuant to Minnesota statute. Is there a motion to that effect?
What is the discussion?
The closed session would be to discuss the purchase or sale of property.
That's correct.
I make a motion, we postpone that for the future until everyone has a chance to look at all the information.
Agenda item number 18, a motion's been made to table that until the next regular council meeting, is that correct? Is there a
Could we do
second?
it at the special meeting that we're going to be having coming up in the week?
Do we know we're having a special meeting? A table has to be to a specific date.
We don't have confirmation from everybody yet as to attendance.
Put it on to the next regular meeting.
Okay, I'd second that motion.
Motion by Dan, seconded by Charlie. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, the motion passes. Is there anything further to come forward from the council? If not, Glenn, do you have anything more?
No.
Tom, do you have anything? Dennis?
No.
Mike?
We'll print out and provide to you, and they can also send it all electronically. I'm not certain if everybody saw it, was an update from the Senate Property Tax Division passing out its report to the full Senate Tax Committee as to its impact to LGA for the city, as well as the transportation updates on both the Senate and the House Transportation Committees passed out the omnibus transportation bills. There's a summary that in light of the chamber hosting transportation Commissioner here on Friday, it was just an attempt to get you the most up-to-date information as to where these issues are at.
Thank you. Very good. The final thing I'd I'd mention is just a thank you to public safety, public administration, the public works for the extra hours in monitoring the water levels in the river, and I think what really for most people in the community was a non-event prior to the flood control project completed in 1997. And had that not been done, we would have been 2 feet over, and we would have had a lot of water in town, similar to 93. Did you have a comment?
Yes, I need to make a comment on that we will be working with Corps of Engineers, DNR, and National Weather Service. We have inaccurate information that's being presented to National Weather Service that generates the emergency flooding notification. We'll work with them. We were several feet, I'll say 3 to 4 feet from the level necessary to do that. So we still appreciate the warnings because it brings people's awareness up of the potential for flooding, both internal and from the river. So we'll just want to make better information available.
Very good. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. Motion by Larry, seconded by Charlie to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, we're adjourned.